Questioning Everything with Adam W.
Episode 12.
Welcome everybody to the Questioning Everything podcast. I'm your host Adam W. and with me is Danny Jordeo. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you.
Welcome. And the topic for today is time. Chronos. Woo! Time's another big topic. Exciting, but big. It's like a gigantic dump truck of different ideas. Again, you could probably branch off like 5 different podcasts just in different things about time, whether or not it's time as a perception or time as a, like in my theory of dimensions, time is the basic construct of dimension. But time is otherwise that which is our greatest resource, is our, the thing we're shortest of in life, and the thing we would have more of the most if we could.
Yeah.
It is goldier than gold. Time.
Well, I think it makes sense because I don't know what exactly it means, but they say that time creates space inside black holes, right? Whether that means space like the one that we perceive, or if it just means it creates just a volume or whatever, right? But if you don't have time, like, I don't think you can have space, because I think part of space and time or whatever, according to Roger Penrose, he's like, well, you have to have mass in order to have a basic ability to measure time or have a clock. You have to have mass. And so I think time can create that mass because it needs to exist, so it needs to create something.
Did he really say that?
Yeah.
Wow. That seems like a bold axiom to me, because I don't think that time requires mass.
No,
goodness no. Mass would be if time required mass, then the universe would be in a state of stasis.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how back I don't know when he said that either, but the further that you go back in the 20th century, they really grappled with what the universe was, as far as like atomic reality. They were looking for the base Lego sets, so to speak. Even though they had quantum physics and math and stuff like that, it wasn't taken as quite as seriously. Everybody thought that there was going to be this real smallest indivisible bit idea, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of our ideas of the world and the universe were built off of kind of the axiom that mass is the basis of all things. It wasn't until we started calculating the expansion rate of the universe and calculating the amount of energy that's in an atom and all that sort of stuff that we were going, well, wait a second. There seems to be a lot of non-massless stuff, right? So that would be something that I think you'd have to explain or reason, is how did the rest of the universe that's not massless come to be if time didn't exist? Because at the most rudimentary level, time is the ability for anything to happen. It's the ability for things to happen. It's the ability for something to change. Nothing would occur without time, right? So that's, if you have a subatomic process, the term process, it assumes time, because processes need a time. They need one, then the next, then a next, then a next. Otherwise, it's not a process. So absolutely every functional, everything from the very inception of anything has to be affected by time, or when that, like if matter precipitated in the universe without time, well, it wouldn't precipitate. That's just it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't precipitate ever. It wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't change states. There would be no state change from moment to moment. The state change, or the change of existence, is literally time, right? We can measure it to the smallest bits possible, the Planck time length, I believe is it. Oh, thank you. Man, that's going to screw me up in post. I'm just going to have to ignore it in the first part. Just had a house fan on. Once we get into editing, that's like in the background. But yeah, I think that's one of the people's conceptual problems with time when it comes down to thinking about physical things, is putting it too far along the chain of existentialism, where it should be step one. It has to be step one. Either it's not step one, or you're starting the universe with some type of a material existence that's in stasis, that has no explanation of how it got there or where it came from or anything like that, because there's no time. This whole idea of like pre-time or anything like that is absolute nonsense.
Right.
Time existed before the Big Bang, if there's a Big Bang. For sure. Time existed before the universe as the universe. Otherwise, it just simply could not have come into existence, right? Nothing happens. So that's really it. If the universe is four-dimensional, then the first dimension's time. Has to be. At least that's my model, as you're aware.
Yeah.
The first dimension's time. Then we've got a two-dimensional material universe, I guess you could say. It's immaterial at that point, but it's still vector space and position coordinates. Right. And and then the final three, which brings us our XYZ axis and makes everything full. But yeah, going back into something previous to time, shit like that is so absurd. I can appreciate mathematics or physicists who want to try to play with time, to try to understand it better, and that's their job, is to just create all the equations and see what happens. Pull time out, make time twice as fast, run time backwards, do all the things, right? See what happens. Run time backwards. You mentioned something about that recently. We were talking about that, didn't you? Yeah.
Because like if you run time backwards, right, it wouldn't matter. You could still have the universe just like this, right? If you reverse the arrow of time, everything would like rewind, right? But if you kept going all the way back to the beginning state or whatever, and you went past that and then reversed the arrow of time, the things would still come together and make stars and planets and whatever. It doesn't matter which way time goes. Doesn't matter. It'll still be able to create stars and whatever material stuff in the universe.
So is that if time is to go backwards from like right now, or if time is to go backwards from like the inception of time? Yeah. Or the inception of the universe as a physical thing? Exactly. Yeah.
If it let's for argument's sake say Big Bang, it exploded. If it imploded and went in that direction, it still would create matter and whatever. I don't think it necessarily means like weirder creatures or whatever would be made. Like the same stuff that would be made in the universe that we're in would be made in any universe, whichever direction the time goes. So like, it doesn't care. It doesn't care.
The universe inside a black hole then at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the time imploded.
Yeah.
So now it's like some time black hole.
Yeah. Like, I don't know what to think. Is it the time or is it the universe itself that would care? It doesn't care. It doesn't care. It'll work no matter what direction it's running, essentially. Or so goes some theories.
The direction part is interesting. The fact that we perceive it as being directional and linear like we do is really interesting. We see it change from one thing to the next, and we create a hypothetical series of anchor points along what we then can call the timeline. But these anchor points are totally hypothetical, right?
Yeah.
Like there really is a moment, and then theoretical anchor points relative to that moment. So there's now, and then there's like 5 minutes ago and 5 minutes from now to come. And we can rationalize them, and we can create useful ideas to sort things. Like last week I worked for 40 hours, so now you owe me so much money. But really, as far as a phenomena goes, there's a single moment phenomena, and once that single moment's passed, there's no actual phenomena. There's no, the only record would be the effects of time itself, like radioactive decay. You could see radioactive decay. Okay, now again, create a hypothetical scenario where 2 million years ago exists as some hypothetical position in space-time, and then theorize that the lead has decayed so much since then. But obviously, none of it is truly existent. So for us to then say that time can move backwards or forwards, or it's a great idea, great philosophy, but there is no time which runs forward and backward and all that sort of stuff, right? Like there's really no principle for that. There's no actual phenomena that says that 2 minutes ago exists anywhere in the universe, whereas we tend to see things as like some kind of a linear timeline that, like, well, why couldn't you go back into time? Because it's like a sheet, it's like a cloth that you've gone, the cloth might have some topology, but you've literally gone somewhere on this topology that is literally there. And now if you wanted to, you could put your vehicle in reverse and reverse along the same topology to the original, but that does not exist. It's literally, the topology's gone. Everything's gone, right? Like the moment that the last moment dies, it's just simply like, it's not even there, right?
Yeah.
So it's highly hypothetical for us to even create theoretical positions in time that are not now, because it's like, I don't even know if you could prove that they exist.
No, you could just make models with math.
Yeah, well, that's just it. And at that point, does any time even exist? Right? If you look at the math perspective, we start to get down to the spectrometry idea, where we take a visible light spectrum and we slice it into 6 and say these are the 6 colors. But are they? Is it really? No, in fact, it's arbitrary. It's something that we've decided and that we've picked because of the sensitivity of light that our eyes happen to have. As far as the spectrum goes, there's a spectrum. You could cut it into 3, you could cut it into 12, you could cut it into 94, depending on what you're sensitive to. The fact that the astrological stuff is 12 is arbitrary. The fact that days of the week are 7 is arbitrary.
Yeah.
It's our own invented timekeeping, but hugely symbolic to people too, right? I mean, like, fucking look at the year 2000 and 2012. And
both years they were supposed to be the prediction of the ending of the Mayan calendar or something like that.
2012 is the end of the Mayan calendar.
Yeah.
The year 2000 was the end of our ROM. Hard drives weren't built to run past 2000. Motherboards, the actual CMOS firmware in motherboards wasn't designed past 1999. For some reason. Seems pretty dumb, right?
Yeah, well, I remember having a Windows 95, and we were going down to Brazil for for the millennium. And I was like, hey, so all this shit in the news, is our computer gonna like die at midnight? He's like, no, man, I looked inside the calendar. It goes on forever. Like the calendar is fine. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it really is. But like, even if you went up to like the 21st Bacton or something, I don't know how far that would be. It'd probably be like 15,000 years or some shit. And it's not even useful at that point anymore. Right? They had a useful count. And even counting to like today, I suppose that back then you'd want to prepare for 2,000 years just in case.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't even think that was, I think that was less than 2,000 years. It was like only 1,000 years ago or something like that they made the long calendar. Long calendar is newer than the old calendar, or the short calendar, as far as I'm aware.
Is the short calendar the one that started 2,000 years ago with Jesus or whatever?
No, they didn't even know about that. They were South American. The short calendar is just a short calendar that counted a few years time for when to plant, when to harvest, all that sort of shit. And then the long calendar came out that, you know, counted vast periods of time for the exchange of empires and generations of people, and, you know, tracking longer. It's fascinating because as human beings, we tend to perceive time as we mature differently between the success of the individual and the success of the whole, right? So the individual is the important thing in the beginning of our life, and then eventually we have a family, and now you're working to stimulate a family after you're gone. So you're trying to provide for things that will outlast you. Yeah. And then on a community level, you're trying to do the same thing, but just in the community sense, where you're trying to provide things to a community, build things that will outlast you. And the calendar might not be the best example of that, but in general, the evolution of their society from seeing things on a day-to-day level, and then finally on a year-to-year level where they've got annual celebrations and annual things, and then to, you know, finally grow that into a generation by generation by generation. It's just, you can see their acknowledgement of the investment of effort towards the betterment of the whole, which is something that takes a degree of maturity, right?
Oh, yeah.
That not all cultures reached. But no, the old 13th Bacton, and the world survived.
Yeah,
surprisingly.
Yeah.
No, this was a close one. That was a close one. We almost had another harmonic convergence, and the angels wove the fourth dimension, 4 more fibers into the universe, and we became 0.01% more consciousness as a species. No, none of that shit. None of that shit. But it's fun to say.
Yeah.
It's fun to think of. Have you heard of the harmonic convergence?
No. Is it some wooey hogwash?
Oh yeah, it's beautifully wooey hogwash. In fact, it occurred in 1987. It was supposed to have occurred, and it anchored the fourth dimension into the super soul of humans, and pretty fun. Pretty fun. Man. I mean, if you were like Sonoma, Arizona, or Mount Shasta, California person, you'd love that shit. You know, got to go to Mount Shasta for 30 days and try to ascend once a year.
Oh, is that like one of those communes or whatever, where like alt culture people go to escape
kind
the rest of
yeah. Well, I don't know.
The woodworking's pretty good up there.
Oh no shit!
Yeah, their cabins look pretty fucking ballin'.
Well, it'd be a good environment, like the Mount Shasta one. I don't know who does what anymore because I'm out of the loop, but like I used to get Sonoma magazine, and that had quite a bit. And then I was always keeping up on like the shit that Matria was doing, or the Ascended Masters group, or like there's a bunch of kind of I mean, it's money making shit, right? So they're money making enterprises, money making groups, which promote and propose different extremely illustrious claimed shit. Like, you know, you can join Elijah, you can join Jesus and Buddha and Elijah in the seventh dimension. All you have to do is spend 30 days in our retreat and you'll be able to turn your body into light and transfigure into Jesus juice.
Yeah, a celestial being.
Is it seriously only $13,000 to do this? You know, wow,
that's less than $1,000 a day.
That's cheap. That's cheap for your salvation and your infinity, your immortality. Fuck, I'll sell my car. And people do sell shit for less, right? Yeah. If you're a faith healer, you'd be getting people selling their house for you.
Holy shit.
I'd love to do that, man. That was one of my paths. It was one of my chosen paths, was to just milk the fuck out of religious people and become a Christian evangelist.
Oh my God.
Music person.
What's that guy's name? Benny
Hill.
Is that it? Is that his name?
Put your hand on the red dot and you will be... Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck.
I used to watch that guy all the time for fucking lulz.
I don't know which guy I like better, him or that really crazy goblin looking dude that like gets people to send in tithes or whatever, and they keep
Eckhart Tolle?
No. No.
He's a goblin-like guy though too.
Oh yeah, he's
fucking scammers.
He's right out of fucking a J.R. Tolkien book.
Yeah.
No, this guy is like the one. Is like when the pandemic first hit, he's like, I know everyone is staying at home and not being able to work, but keep sending in those tithes. Whatever the fuck tithes they're supposed to do is like, the church needs one more. What was it like? Private jet. They have like 4 or 5 of them, and he's always being. It's like, so you're taking all these people's money and you're getting like really nice airplanes. He's like, well, God wants it to. He's like, it's for God. Like, well, I am the speaker for God. Like, why shouldn't I be traveling in one of my 5 private jets? Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, fuck.
No, it's big money, man. It's big money. And the older I get, the less I believe in, the more of a nihilist I become, I guess it is.
Yeah.
So at one point I believed in like the moral, you know, the right thing to do, all that sort of shit.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure if that's the legitimate anchor point. You know, we tend to use it as an anchor point and is it legit, or is it a sucker's bet? Is it there to suck those of us who are unfortunate enough to be soft enough to be captured by it?
Yeah.
When really, like, I could be having moral conflicts on an island somewhere, drinking a fucking mojito with a Bentley behind me, being like, did I do the right thing? You know? I don't know. I'm not sure. If I could go back in time, I think I'd probably wait until I was wiser, maybe another 20, 30 years, if I can last that long. But at this point, I'm like, don't put that away, because if we need that time machine, I want to zip back and fucking just flip this shit right over and Fuck this nice guy crap.
Yeah.
Let's just go straight on Predator and eat the world, because at the end of the day, you become feces for somebody else's body, and that's the long and the short of it. Once you shit out, then you can feel good about yourself because you weren't a bad person. Meanwhile, it's like it's almost like the coke dealer mentality that if you don't do it, somebody else will.
Yeah.
That the end of the day, the negative stuff will be there regardless of whether or not you participate in it. It's just whether or not you benefit from it.
Yeah.
So yeah, religious bullshit where you make tons of money off of people and their weakness. Not my gig, but I might be regretting that one day. Because it's good money and people can ultimately fuck themselves. Like even doing this, I question this. Like, why would we want to do this? I watch them. I see the things I say. I'm like, why would I even want to do this? Why am I putting my head on a fucking guillotine? For what? To communicate something for somebody else? Like, I don't need to talk about stuff that I already think about, It's generally for the benefit of other people. Yeah. But, like, really, is it worth the sacrifice? It's definitely not. It's definitely not. So why do it? I have no idea. Maybe lose jobs. Maybe lose, who knows? Respective peers. Lord knows. I don't even know. I don't really care, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, if I lose a damn thing so that somebody else can gain something, it seems like a lot of folly. Mm. And that is the exchange of time, because that's what time does. Time facilitates exchanging between things, and that's what the entire story is about. The entire story is about exchange. Atoms exchanging electrons constantly in a constant state of flux and flow, exchanging positions, exchanging information on what to do, like we've seen in those tiny electron microscopy things. It sent me a video at one point where there's the atoms that are, if they're moved around, then they just start to shimmy until they reorganize themselves and they find a position that's happy.
I'm really glad you are saying these exact concepts and things, because have you heard of time crystals?
No. Don't think so.
So I only watched the video like once, and I was kind of like half listening, so I'm not going to do a good representation of it. But the first half that I was paying attention to, the guy was saying, like, just like how you're saying, like, one of the most common states of any material in the universe is diamonds, or not diamonds, but like, yeah, it's diamonds. Everything likes to
crystalline.
Yeah, crystallize. That's like the natural state that everything likes to get set up in, and like for them, like, yeah. So if that's the case, then time itself should kind of do something similar to that. And then they've actually have like this little photograph of what they call a time crystal, and all it looks like is like just a waveform, but like a consistent wave form. It's not like it doesn't have like a weird signature of like different tones or whatever. It's just dark and lightness, and it kind of just goes bloop 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 bloop. Oh, I probably should have had it ready to go to send it to you.
It's all right. It's all right. We can swing back around another time or whatever with some video.
But I definitely recommend checking that out. Time
crystals, eh? Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Never thought of time as well, actually that's not really entirely true, because in my model time forms crystals, and those crystals are literally everything.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, to think of it as actually having some structure, some shape, or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, everything else does. The entire universe.
If it's right, you might be fucking pretty close to being on point than you might even believe, or find out and get proven right. But it's not about getting proven right. It's just about thinking.
Well, I think part of my model's pretty solid. I'm not even worried about the accuracy of the basic principle. It is unescapable that time is concurrently existing and all that sort of shit, right? So it's just, which explanation do you prefer over the other, I suppose. He's just, in case anybody's caught up, joined us recently, he's actually nailing nicotine.
Yeah.
He could be nailing cannabis and nobody would give a shit here on this podcast because you can do whatever the fuck you want, but nailing nicotine is a wild thing that I've never even thought of.
Oh man, it, like, the first time I did it, it hit me so hard in the chest. I was like, "Oh, okay, I gotta." So I've fine-tuned it to how hot I need to get the thing and how little of drops.
Yeah.
Essentially, I think, because it's not going through a cotton wick or anything. It's just going straight. I might as well be just sipping on it, and that's really not good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm hooked on the nicotine molecule.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't know how much worse that I'd think that nail would be. The problem with the vaporizers is the coil itself has a variable heat.
Yeah.
Along the coil. So there'll be parts of the coil that are cooler than others. And then,
for sure,
obviously, when the coil contacts anything, then there's this cooling and then the compensation process. So there's even in a good one with like variable voltage in order to compensate for the impedance of contacting stuff and getting cooled by it. The act of warming something cools the source that warms it by nature. It ends up having a lot of variance, and really optimally a vaporizer would not have very much variance because you're not dealing with substances that are broad property. You're dealing with very specific property substance where you got very specific evaporation point and then a flash point or combustion point, and you want to make damn sure that you're not combusting it. That's the problem. It's the combustion proper,
that makes contents. Like bad things
ash.
Like
anything, right? And once you start burning combustion substances, then this is a different thing altogether. So you'd have to find out what is produced during combustion, and then look at that as far as like an ash. What does it contain? What is it? Because that you're not vaporizing it. You're not just going from a liquid to a vapor state through getting to the evaporative temperature quickly or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only thing when I was using it. I'm like, there's combustion involved. There's points where there's contact on the coil where it is exceeding the temperatures of evaporation and it's straight into combustion.
Oh yeah. The cotton wicks get burnt and like you have to switch them.
That's just
yeah, you gotta switch them every week or so. I know how heavy of a user I am. Like I have to get new whatever coils every week and a half.
And the cotton it's indicative of the of the temperatures. But when you're talking about propylene glycol and vegetable glycol, those have a very low evaporative temperature, right?
Yeah.
So they are like, that's why we use them as fog machines, and they're used as atmosphere on set and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I got 2 freaking jugs of it right here.
Yeah, generally considered harmless, right?
Yeah.
But whatever the other stuff in the vaporizers that are creating the flavor, so some kind of a flavonoid or a terpene or something like that, creating the flavor, is
shit. I'm sure some people are crazy enough to use what do they call essential oils like that. You should never use essential oils like as concentrated as we do. Like, I think it's pretty dangerous that people are handling essential oils to make like their little little potpourri corners or whatever to make the room smell good. Like, if you're not doing that with gloves, like that's some heavy cost.
Don't rub your eyes after.
Yeah. But I wonder, like, if you're just using your bare hands and you get too much of any kind of essential oil, because it's so concentrated, can you not give yourself a bit of a toxic shock? Or
it would have to depend on which one it is. Yeah. For the most part, no.
No, they're pretty harmless for the most part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's dermal absorption of whatever substance, and the essential oils are also usually pure, so it's not. They're very thick.
Yeah.
Some things, I suppose, if you were to get it into your mouth, or I don't know, if you had, say, just put it on your skin, you could have some kind of a skin irritation.
Yeah.
But there's not going to be like blood toxicity or body toxicity, or, it's kind of strange. I mean, even like cinnamon itself, cinnamon is very, very similar to an essential oil. It's kind of like a powdered version of an essential oil, where it's loaded with it's basically a benzene ring complex that we like to eat.
Yeah.
Right. So benzene is toxic.
Yep.
And all hydrocarbons are like from petrochemicals. Most of them are benzenes rings.
Okay.
Terribly bad for you. Super pungent, aromatic, everything like that. But again, once you get into cinnamon, our body has adapted to deal with the cinnamon benzene ring as a non-toxin, same as like capsicum. Capsicum is a toxin to mammals that we enjoy. We enjoy it. Strangely enough,
So was that that's the spice and spicy stuff? That last one you said?
Yeah. Capsaicin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, love that stuff.
Yeah, although it's like, but that's just it. Is that it is a powerful toxin. It doesn't poison you, but we physically react to it.
Oh yeah,
create the chemical sensation of burning, and if you were to get into your eyes and other things also respond to it too. It's a pretty good pesticide, for example, right? So. No, I've got a lot of different essential oils because, like, I make fragrances, and I'd sooner put essential oils on my body in relatively strong concentrate than I would similar fragrance that's been made synthetically,
right? Because
that is literally just the chemical shape of that odor, and however it was manufactured is like whatever's in your vaporizer there is probably less, like, I trust it less than any essential oil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Like it's less, the means by which they have produced it is less common than essential oil. Essential oils, we've been doing essential oils for a really long time. So the press, cold press, hot press, the extraction process, whatever it is pretty solid. And the end result is pretty uniform. You know what to expect. There's like, because I do cosmetics, I buy from sellers that have records of, their gas chromatography and their expirations and their all the different bullshit. So if I was to pour vaporizer juice, I wouldn't even expect that out of the supplier. The supplier would be pretty much 100% from China, and it would be vast barrels of
who knows what food tested, probably food tested at some point, because like, where did these compounds come from? Well, they're flavoring, they're food flavorings. They've never been tested for being inhaled. They've never been tested for their pyrolytic compounds or the post combustion, whatever the ash is. So there's just like zero insurance, a surety that you're not fucking poisoning yourself. Whereas with it hasn't been a thing long enough.
With oregano oil, you can fucking just like put that shit straight in your mouth.
Yeah, isn't that pretty wild? Like oregano oil, like isn't it like at high concentration? It's pretty kind of
It doesn't taste great. Yeah.
No.
I mean, if you put a couple drops in a glass of water and hammer it down, then even a kid can do that. But as an adult, a couple drops under the tongue seems to be like the most effective. And
it's good for like what, colds? Or
it's an antiseptic, right? Okay. So the link between absorption of biochemistry and then the biochemistry in the bloodstream doing anything, I don't even know. I've never even I've never even considered it. To me, it is an antiseptic that will neutralize bacteria in your throat, essentially. So your sinuses in your throat are the thing that's usually colonized with bacteria when you do get the rhinovirus or the coronavirus or the enterovirus. And a couple drops of oil of oregano, mix it in with your saliva, coating your throat, shit has a pretty hard time surviving. It's very similar to like having a shot of whiskey in a different, if you're in a different time and place. A good healthy shot of whiskey and fucking do the trick, right? If there's shit colonized in your throat, it's pretty hard to survive whiskey. It's really hard to survive oil of oregano as well. But as far as like getting absorbed into the bloodstream and doing something like that, I've never even heard of a link to that degree. You'd be better off at that point with vitamin C and zinc and selenium.
Yeah.
The cold things and vitamin D, which I've got right here. What's this one here? Oh, B6 and B12.
Ooh.
And then biotin. I don't even know why I have the biotin. Can't fucking remember. Somebody had it for something, and it was like $9. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, pick that up.
Biotin, why not?
I don't even need it. I used to like taking dimethylglycine, which is DMG, is vitamin B16. It used to be called, and it's really good for your hair. They give it to horses. So if you did show horses, then you'd give it to them so that they have more vibrant, shinier, healthier hair. Does the same thing for humans, but they've pulled it from the vitamin list because it doesn't have a deficiency response that produces some kind of a health issue. So it's not technically needed. So it's not the Vita part. It never passed the Vita test.
Do you think the way that you think about time in your model and whatever, how it's the first dimension, do you think
it's not the first dimension, really?
No,
it's just the first thing
in the line of
dimension itself in my model is composed of 2 points of time, and that's it. That's the very basis of the fundamental basis of dimension is 2 points of time.
That's it. Just constantly over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Well, it just depends.
Right.
Just depends. Depends what we're talking about. I'd say most structures just die out quickly, but there's a structure that in order for us to be talking about this conversation right now, that structure hasn't. So for people who are wondering, the whole idea of my dimensional system is that there's the first dimension, one-dimensional structures themselves are essentially relationships between 2 points in time, right? When the second point in time exists, then it essentially annihilates. It neutralizes itself and annihilates. The first point of time generates a potential for the second point. So it starts something, and then the second point in time is the termination of that thing. When I'm looking at these structures that get formed, there's a lot of them that just seem to be short-lived, where they just simply terminate. But there are structures that do not terminate and that have larger structures built on top of them or on them. The structures that do not terminate are the reason that we're here. The reason that we're here is that there are structures that have not terminated. If they terminated, that would be it. So essentially in this model, the universe is built step by step by step in orders of complexity by creating structures that form relationships with each other that in those relationships produce superstructures, or they have emergent qualities that are greater than the individual structures or the sum of their parts. And the basis being is that, it'd almost be like just some gigantic building made out of toothpicks or something, really, if you were to look at the structure, but it's constantly moving, or it's as time, quote unquote, time moves on, it's not terminating. The entire world as we know it, in fact, is built on the non-terminated structures. So at the end of the universe, hypothetically, the last structure, the last point of time will exist, which annihilates essentially everything, right? Because everything that we know, like to have a time that's contiguous requires a structure that's non-annihilated. A structure has to exist contiguously for time to exist contiguously. If the structure didn't exist, then time would stop. At least as we know it, right?
Right. So are you saying that point of time at the end of the universe or whatever, are you saying that once
it appears,
that'll be it and everything will annihilate?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And at that point, there's no like walking off. There's no entropy type stretching of, but again, I think that if we were to hammer it out, the entropy portion of the universe, as we've discussed previously, would still occur. It would be part and parcel. Whatever occurs in the universe hypothetically within this model, a part of that. The not necessarily the plan, because I don't think that there's a plan, but there's a trajectory, right? But yeah, no matter how you slice it, I think fitting time into our understanding of space-time and all that sort of shit has been a constant refinement, you know?
Yeah.
Relativity itself and everything is requiring time, because it's a relationship between the repositioning of things over time. And why? Same as chemistry. Chemistry is literally the study of how things change and how they interface each other. It's not about a chemical and then here's the chemical's crystalline structure and here's the valences and here's what commonly connects to it and here's what shapes it commonly takes, and it you know, like you could look at it like that, but ultimately it's about the change, constant change, constant flux of change, and the kinematics of what's actually occurring when chemicals bond, and when, you know, there's no use for a static chemical perspective at all, you know. It's what a chemical is going to do next is literally based on the relationship between what's around it. So, you know, even if whether it's going to do nothing. So the whole of our perception of physics and chemistry and everything like that revolves around time as a pivot point, regardless of whether or not somebody intentionally in the model that they work with in their mind places time in an important position or in an unimportant position. No matter how you slice it, you can't, I don't know how you could go back to the dawn of the universe, even to like the straight up precipitation, the development of quarks, the development of gluons, or you know, words that I don't know, bosons and shit. How does that happen without time?
Yeah.
It simply doesn't, right? So when it comes right down to it, time's like, why do we even talk about it? You know, it's useful for physicists, I suppose, to be able to calculate speed, because time and speed and all, distance and everything's all relevant, but it's so prevalent and there's no universe without it that it's redundant almost to consider it, or to try to give it some fabric, right? Which is what I think people do. They try to give it a fabric. They try to look at the universe as the bed sheet, and go, okay, well, how does time, which one of these threads is time?
Yeah.
Which one of these degrees of freedom is time? And it's the degree of freedom that you have another moment to compare the last moment to. That's it. Right? That is it.
Yeah. Ooh. What about, like, is there such thing as a time bomb, or is that just a comic book idea? And if there were to be, if you could, so okay, what I think I'm trying to mash out here on the spot is if you somehow were able to find a physical representation of what we could say is time, like say like a chronon, right? Like a theoretical particle. Mm-hmm. Say we find the thread. Well, if you find the thread, then theoretically you could make a time bomb, because now it has a physical property. If you can find it, you can somehow hit it with energy, or who knows what it would do. But like, what would that kind of a reaction cause? or would there even be a reaction?
Yeah, honestly, I can't imagine a time thread or something.
Yeah.
It's not existential. It's not an electron. It is, it's a squirrely thing because it's literally just does not exist. It doesn't exist.
I think a good way of maybe kind of giving it not exactly existence, but an idea. It's the frequency, right? It's if at the most basic level of anything is the electron or whatever, it has to have a frequency, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Like right?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So maybe, that itself, frequency cannot exist without time because time is literally the wave, right? So that's the only way I can give form to time is just frequency. That's it. It's just that white noise you hear if your house has shitty wiring and you plug something in and you hear it in the back of your head. Just
well, that's just it. That's all you can do is look at a thing and then go, wow, this thing keeps changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you measure the changes, that's the closest thing you're going to get to measure time.
It's just
we don't know how much we can slice time up. We have we have our Planck time, but we don't know how small it gets, and in fact, it doesn't really even appear that it's a thing. That's just it. It doesn't appear that it's a particle. It appears that it's an emergent property from existence in itself. And it is emergent from something that we don't know. So existence itself, period, the tiniest fucking non-quantum, early proto-quantum period, it already exists within an envelope of time. Yeah. And that envelope of time, again, it doesn't appear to exist. Like there's no. You
can't draw a picture of it and say this is where it is, because it's not like that.
Yeah, and you can't like go back in time, or it's paradoxical.
Yeah,
time is itself paradoxical because space has a beginning. Everything has a beginning. We can calculate beginnings. We can hypothesize them if we don't quite know, but there is literally no beginning to time.
It just always was until it's not, until it annihilates.
Until it annihilates, yeah. If that even occurs, really.
Yeah.
It seems like it should, but it's like the death of a consciousness or something at that point.
Nice.
Really, time and consciousness are really, really similar in that sense that time presents us an observer. Time presents us an observer even before there's something to observe.
Right.
By the time there's anything to observe even exists in the universe, time is there watching it. It's really it, right? It's pretty. It's the trippy thing, and that's just it. Is that it's like time might be the throwback from whatever existed before the universe. So that's what the universe starts with, is
the end of another one, perhaps.
It's like a bunch of potential.
Yeah.
In time. And then if we were to talk about time, well, what is time? If we try to hammer time down, then we're again talking about something that's relative to a period of progress, because time, and the rate of time, and the rate of either atomic activity or the rate of, like, say, decay that we could calculate time from, or the rate of the time it takes for light to go through 1 unit of space or something like that, right? These are all going to change as space changes and as space grows and dense becomes more dense. Time, quote unquote, is going to have different relativities throughout that, right? And ultimately is just a relativity. Right? It's a relationship between two things. So fucked up stuff.
Yeah. So what if the first, well, maybe that's a good way of understanding things that annihilate each other. It's just a bad relationship, man. Get out. Get out of there. Mm-hmm. But pretty sure, if I remember correctly, the like actual things that annihilate happen because you have two things that are identical, but they're the complete polar opposites of each other, and they just can't.
Matter, antimatter.
Yeah, and then they just annihilate into light. They're like, yeah, you wanted to be matter, but you can't. So maybe that's what it is. Oh, that's a fun idea. Thank you, brain. So what if, it's not just one thing coming out of nowhere and annihilating. It's a bunch of these points in time that are all doing it together. And maybe if they're close enough to each other, instead of annihilating, the positive pair finds a positive pair and the negative pair finds a negative pair, or whatever the antiparticles charge is. And then that's what
you're describing is the phenomenon that occurs within superstructures.
Yeah.
So the structure itself annihilates, but the structure itself, it's not all that important. The story at that point is about the superstructure. And in order for the superstructure to remain in existence, that structure is simply replaced, as you're saying. The annihilation produces the generation of something in its stead, to the point where the actual the house made out of toothpicks can remain a house, even as the various toothpicks are being replaced.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Doesn't matter what the material is, as long as it's being kept going.
Yeah. And I don't actually understand thoroughly how that would work. One thing I do understand is that is a superstructure phenomenon. So it affects the superstructure end of things, the phenomenon, the after effect phenomena type thing. As far as like time in and of itself, it couldn't be constantly replaced.
Right.
It couldn't constantly annihilate and be replaced. There is literally a structure that formed in the beginning of time that still exists.
It's just getting stretched out real far, really, or really fast.
Yeah, well, that's just it. And it's like the one-dimensional structures don't have any spatial significance. So yeah, it is not terminated, but it doesn't have any spatial physical size, so to speak. It is omnipresent, and the physical stuff doesn't come until quite a bit after that, right? But yeah. So, but that if you were to have then, even though people probably don't really care to hear about this, but it's fun. If you were to have two of these, linear, sort of stretched out permanently, going on forever structures, and they were to be perpendicular and connected, right? So connecting structures into superstructures is a trick in and of itself, but the phasing then, or the direction, is also a thing. And if you can get to one-dimensional superstructures that are perpendicular or phased perpendicularly, then hypothetically, then that can produce the illusion of planarism. Because
Planets, right?
No, just planes.
Oh, slices.
Planes, yeah. So now two-dimensional universe stuff.
Yeah.
A sheet of paper. You know,
Those sheets of paper don't have to necessarily be stacked nice and neat on top of each other, right? Like every slice, if I'm following along, like let's for argument's sake say they're all square shapes.
I'm not talking about slices on top of each other.
Oh, okay.
I'm just talking about, like, you get one arm going out this direction, you get another arm going out this direction. They're 90 degrees to each other, perpendicular.
Yeah.
They're moving infinitely away from each other, and as a result, they produce a two-dimensional manifold.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
It doesn't have to be that 14 or whatever Eric is working on. Is it Eric?
I don't know. Everybody loves fucking goddamn dimensions, man. 14, 32, 85. It's amazing how many dimensions three-dimensional things can have. Really. Like, really, right?
Yeah.
Like, does the universe have 85 dimensions? Who knows? It might.
I'm not.
It might even. But assuming that we've got 3 physical dimensions in time, which is probably the best thing to assume, then how do they work? And really, like, how is spatiality even produced, right? Through just dimension.
Yeah. And dimensions isn't necessarily a time or a place. It's just a word for describing. It's like defining the properties of any given thing. Like,
It's supposed to be a degree of freedom.
Yeah. So it's like everything is made out of atoms that all have their own unique spin, orientation, and flavor or color or whatever. And then they all come stick together, make all kinds of different flavors of molecules. And if you get enough cool molecules together, you get people, you get, rabbits, you get fish, you get airplanes. Superstructures. Woo! I used to think superstructures or anything like that before you started putting some stuff in my head. I used to think, like, for something to be a superstructure, it actually has to have some, like, superstructure, like the stars or the planets. And you're like, yeah, those are just giant fourth dimensional things. We're superstructures. I'm like, oh, cool. So it's like it made, like, the universe not as important how big it is to me, because it doesn't matter about, like, the actual size of something. It's just how much complexity you can pack into a body. A vessel.
Oh yeah, we're way more interesting than a star.
Yeah.
Way more interesting than a star. Fuck, it takes stars billions of years to get as interesting as we are.
Yeah.
Literally. Stars, if they're lucky, they'll become us. If they're lucky, something like us that can talk about itself.
Wow.
Really, right?
That would
Nova enough to create these metals, and next thing you know, the atoms rearrange themselves into something that's talking. But we are the body of the sun, even if just the extended body, because it's all going to go back to it, and everything within the orbit of our sun is going to be the sun again eventually. It's falling towards the sun.
Yeah.
So
maybe that's probably how solar systems work. We just haven't been looking in the stars for long enough to actually see that. Who knows if we would even be able to see that happening in the limited time we have.
See what happening?
A solar system getting destroyed by its sun, right? And then it all falling back in and perhaps starting it all over again. Because I don't like the idea of just like, okay, well, all stars are eventually going to peter out and destroy whatever solar system they had orbiting them, which pretty much every star has a solar system. That's just how solar systems are made. If they just get one crack at it, that doesn't make much sense. That doesn't make much sense why we even still have as many stars in the sky as it is. Because if they just go out and either black hole or gravity well or whatever, then I would assume that the universe already died, and we're just seeing it's already being annihilated, but it's just taking a long time for the annihilation wave to reach us, in the same idea that it takes thousands and thousands of years for that light to get to us.
Yeah, would we even see it? It would have to be pretty close to see a solar system forming. Obviously, too, it'd take billions of years or something like that. But if we were to see, that would just be a dust cloud at that point.
Like we can't even look at the surface of our own planets in our solar system with like with today's sophisticated technologies, with like our telescopes and our radar telescopes and stuff. Like there was a scientist, I can't remember what they're actually called, but she studies the moons of Saturn or whatever, like Titan and Europa and whatever. And I think she was on I can't remember if she was on Lex Friedman or if she was on Joe Rogan, but whichever it was, the guys asked her, it's like, so can you see like on your cameras like real time changing movement on the planets from Earth? Like, not really. It's like updated like every 4 minutes or something like that, the pictures that they get back. Like they have sent probes or whatever that did flybys and they got some pretty good footage, but other than that,
and it's going to take like 20 minutes for the footage to get to you at the minimum.
Yeah, like
just at the speed of light. You know, the fucking sun's 8 minutes away as far as the speed of light. Wow. So if the sun burnt out, we wouldn't know for 8 minutes. No, it's all pretty wild. Cosmogony is and those dudes, the people who do that, are so smart. They're so smart. They've got some serious ass shit going on in their noggin. The extrapolation and figuring stuff out, being able to deduce, really, deduction and extrapolation from what would be an insufficient amount of information for pretty much the rest of us. Yeah. You know.
But then when you have the information, what good is it though? Once you have it, once you think you've got it figured out pretty good, then what? You win a Nobel Prize and call it a day, or how useful is it? Like, I'm getting to the point where it's like I still fucking think about all this stuff all the time, and I'm always wanting to find out more because I know as little as I do know, there's so much more to learn about any of these given things. But I'm not the one that's on the going to the lab every day doing the math, trying to figure it out. I don't have the capacity or the care for past like being able to understand when someone else does it, and I can kind of comprehend what it is going on. But even if I did fully comprehend, like, what good is it? Like,
It's a big investment in time as well.
yeah.
It's one of those things where if you get into sciences, research science, or anything like that, technology, as far as development, you have to accept that you're not going to be the Nikola Tesla. You know, if you're in chemistry, you're probably not going to discover a new element. You'll hear about people who did. You'll read about them in university, obviously learn about the progress and blah. And people want to kind of be an important person that makes a big difference and discovers something important or does something important. And that dream has to be disregarded pretty quickly in the sciences, because you are more likely to be somebody who studies the 89th enzyme of a fruit fly and how that enzyme protects the fruit fly from pyrethrin.
Yeah.
You know, like literally. And yeah, it's important work because we need to know about pyrethrin and we need to know about fruit flies, but at the end of the day, it's just not, it's not the, you know, it's not the, you're not going to be Neil deGrasse Tyson or, you know, Peter Higgs, or chances are, you know, like you're not even going to be a Richard Penrose. You're probably just going to be somebody, research person, cited in a paper, you know, if you're lucky, more often than not, but the average person will never have heard of you.
Yeah. And why should they? In the whole grand scheme of things, nothing matters. It's all just a random fluke, and appreciate it, enjoy it. It's beautiful. Think about it for sure. Figure it out. But but what good is a couple of hey, you figured out something on the backs of so many other works that came before you? Like you didn't pull this one out of nowhere, dude.
No, it's not out of nowhere, but a cool contribution, I think, is just what people are going for.
Yeah.
There's the ego. The ego gets involved, obviously, and says that I'm an important person and I should have something important to do in life. Yeah. But then even the wise adult just simply wants to contribute, and
yeah.
I don't know why that part of us exists, because it's counterproductive, but it really is, you know. I'd love, as an anarchist philosopher, I would love my moral center to be able to justify itself.
That's fair.
Yeah, justify its existence, because the moral answer to things are like the right thing to do, or things that help the world or whatever, to sacrifice any part of the self for something that the self really doesn't gain anything from, you know.
Yeah,
is a phenomenal weird thing. It's really weird. And then like the social idea that we're just like bound to serve. We're bound to it, you know. Serve
each other, serve mankind, serve forward progression.
Yeah.
Fuck 'em.
Well, that's just it. Is that the less philosophical you are, the chances are that you will serve yourself more. Yeah. The more philosophical you are, the chances are that you'll actually end up serving other people. But again, I'm not sure why. I would like to understand why selflessness is an evolutionary advantage for the mature. You know?
Well, I
could see that if you had an answer like DNA itself is partially aware, and that the goal of DNA itself is greater than the individual, maybe that. Or if you had a spiritual answer that said that the person connects to a spiritual body that is greater than they are and encompasses large amounts of people or something, and then so therefore the selfless act is a selfish act, just in this like meta something, but then you'd have a whole lot of shit to account for that doesn't seem to be like, that doesn't seem to be the existence. So yeah, what advantage any moral positioning has, I have no idea. And even though I seem I'm impulsive towards it, or I'm, you know, I find it to be something that I choose. Like I'd rather err towards it. And if I'm wrong, then at least I was ethical while being wrong. But at the same time, as like a philosopher, I don't get it. It bewilders me, because like even why I would want to do this podcast bewilders me. I have no idea. And if there's there's something interesting in that answer, I think, because it is either of those two things. Either there's somehow some group awareness where we want the group to move forward. We want the whole to mature and to educate and to become enlightened and self-aware and progress, because we're part of it. We sense it somehow. I don't know. I mean, I don't sense it. I sense a lot of things, but I don't sense being part of a fucking global community or some shit like that. When it comes down to my psyche and my spirit and my all that sort of shit, we're connected, but the independence that we have is the thing that is detectable, right?
Yeah.
So why would we fuck ourselves for the benefit of the whole? I have no idea, but we do.
Well,
we do.
Altruism is evil. I think the more of it, because you don't have to give people charity, right? And it's not a bad thing when you do, when you help someone out. But if we're supposed to be born and taught and programmed to, slave away and sacrifice for the next person beside you, well, how many people are sacrificing and how many people are just taking advantage of that sacrifice? So it might as well, I really got into Ayn Rand the past couple of weeks, and just like what she says makes so much sense. It's it should be everyone's goal to pursue whatever makes you happy.
Yes.
If you're happy, then it should be everyone else around you won't be, less happy, right? If everyone was not sacrificing for the next person beside them, or sacrificing for the greater whole, if everyone was striving to be happy and to do what they love, and whatever that is, there's got to be some more morals to that, right? You can't pick, I love killing people, that's my thing, right? But whatever it is that you want to do, go do it. And just like the whole way how communism was supposed to work, it wasn't supposed to be the way it was. It was just supposed to be the result of capitalism. Capitalism is what should be communism, and it's what we kind of have here in North America with social assistance, and in Canada we've got healthcare, right? That's pretty fucking communist, right? We get taxed, and then it gets redistributed back to us
It's socialized. Yep.
Yeah, and social, backups and stuff like that. But it's not communism. Kind of is, but it's not. It's not called that.
Well, it's capitalism in our case. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's the means by which you derive that result is the difference between capitalism and communism.
Yeah.
They can have the same result. The result itself of, say, having medical, that's not communist in and of itself. It's the communism would be how do you arrive at achieving medical for everybody, and is there a market? Is there a market means, or is there a contrived means? And communism is contrived. There's no market. Right?
Yeah, they completely destroy the market.
Yeah. There's no the free market, really. Yeah. Right. It's the best way to call it, because the free market just you open it up, you let everybody do what they want. Whereas with communism, you plan and you choose what will be manufactured and what won't be manufactured, and who will get it. Feel like a tenor.
Yeah.
Okay.
What the?
Let's take.
Come on.
Let's take 10.
Okay. Yeah, choosing the devil, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah. There's so many different layers to that. Whether or not it's just fear of success at that point, people will then sabotage any successes that they might have, or they'll blow any savings. They'll the desire to equalize oneself to one's comfort zone, whether the comfort's poverty or lack of health, or just depends.
Yeah, it's also an identity, probably. Like, this is what I'm from. This is what I know.
Yep.
I don't know any better.
Yeah, and these are the people that I like, and these are the people that I identify with. People want to hang out with people that they can associate with and identify with.
Yeah.
You don't want to, if you feel low about yourself, you don't want to hang out with successful, smart, good-looking people, because
holding their head up high and always seem like they got their shit together.
Yeah, you're always going to be comparing yourself with them and judging yourself against them. You'll hold other people to a higher standard than yourself, and so you're not going to be happy like that. So you're going to want to find people that are
same.
Yeah, or just somehow fucked up.
Yeah, that's a funny thing about inclusion. There's a component to inclusion that's the opposite, like choosing who you include and who you don't. It's not, you're not an asshole. You're not, you can't have time for everyone.
Yeah.
So you gotta be okay with some people can't make it to the clubhouse. It sucks, but
yeah.
You gotta try to keep some kind of what's that big word I like?
Standards,
but it's like homogeneous or whatever.
Homogeneous.
You want to keep some kind
homogeneity.
You want to keep some level of even comfort for everyone, right? Because otherwise, what are you doing if you can't be comfortable with anybody? Then don't be the monkey wrench in everyone else's.
Common goals and common stuff like that. That's where like church might come in.
Yeah.
And even though most of us these days aren't super fond of church, we could use something that could replace it, where we all have a common denominator, where the person who's the dispatcher, who's coming up to 50 and who's never made more than $30 in their life an hour, you know, to the writers or the executives, accountants, and doctors and shit like that. So to be able to to give people common ground, that's something that we're missing right now. Even something like Freemasonry, which I'm a member of, isn't like that because of the tendency to sort. The sorting hat comes in prior because of what people would identify with, what they'd be interested in. I don't think a lot of people that are having hard lives, or, you know, I don't think that they'd be like, yeah, fucking join Freemasonry. It's usually people in places of privilege who are haves, not have-nots, and you know, have some familial connection or whatever like that, but it doesn't serve to unify the members of a community that are everybody from the ditch digger to the executive, which the church did at one point. Maybe not great, maybe not well, but better. You know, there's an opportunity there for people of all financial positions and all social positions to get together, and then that way, ideally, you know, because adults can kind of fuck themselves, and adults can be whoever they want to be, but that type of community bonding is more beneficial for the younger generations, so that children of poor parents aren't forced to only know children of poor parents. You know, the children themselves, they should be able to transcend the parental or the parents' social status and financial positions and everything like that, and just know each other and get along. But children, we start to mix our children based on these stratifications as well. So if you're a poor kid, you're going to be more likely to know poor kids. As a result of a lack of integration. So I don't know the solution to that, but I'm under the impression that society could use something similar to church anyway.
Some people, I think, find it in like community sports, like and some specific community sports in certain regions. Like I knew growing up, I played lacrosse, and Poco is kind of a lacrosse town, but no one really got as jazzed about, you know, going to the games or playing the year-end provincials or whatever, as much as people get fired up for hockey or even community football. I played a couple of years of community football. Woo! Those parents and the kids and everything, like players or just like the siblings, everyone loved Sunday game day. Come on down. Everyone's bringing like, what are they called? Like canopies, setting up chairs, like, because like a football game is all day pretty much. It's like a 4-hour thing. And so it's like, yeah, people come out and there's a community there.
Absolutely. And you can kind of cross cultures, but again, I don't think that it is universally available. I think that wealthier or middle class kids, suburban home, 2-car garage, you know, dad is in construction as a contractor and mom is a teacher, and everybody parts their hair to the side, and you know, you've got like literally alligator shirts and polo shirts in your house somewhere. Like that's not part of my society. It's not part of my culture, really, right? Where, you know, the top drawer is where everybody puts their weed. That's my society, my culture. And I guess I'm lucky enough to cross over, and you know, because I've got social spheres of multiple different people, but I think in the end, a lot of things, even sports in that case, are going to eliminate the bottom rungs of poverty. The poorest kids in the town are probably not going to be in the soccer league.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's expensive.
The cleats and the uniform and even so much as the habituation of to be able to have a parent take you to hockey. Mm-hmm. If you live in a household where you have a parent that's a hockey parent, you're probably not in assistance poverty. If you're in assistance poverty where you're in assistance, you know, your family subsides on government assistance and everything like that. The chances of mom and dad being available every Sunday at 6 a.m. to take you to that soccer game, even if you could get somebody to sponsor you for your cleats or something like that, the lifestyle coincides with the poverty quite often, right? But like people are quite often have poverty situations because or as a result of their lifestyle, where, you know, there's a party Saturday night, so Sunday, like, well, how could you be expected to be up at 6 a.m. for a soccer game when Saturday night, you know, you might be going to sleep at 6 or it's just not that sort of thing. It's just not that sort of habituation, right?
Yeah.
A lot of families just don't have that, where you've got parents that are willing to be up in the morning and take their kid to thing. And, yeah, it is what it is. Money sorts us more than anything else, more than intelligence, more than maturity, more than anything. Our life, our future is probabilistically sorted out due to or based on our financial situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the financial situation of our parents, unfortunately, which is what makes it what makes it a product of luck and not effort.
Yeah,
because you can
stop working so hard. Well,
you can intend well. You can be smart. You can be a big heart. Well, you could be all the person that a person needs to be successful in the world. And if your parents weren't those people, then you're going to have a hell of a start.
Yeah,
because it's going to be swimming upstream the whole way.
Yeah,
unfortunately, but it is what it is.
Fighting some kind of bipolar disorder or fucking a bunch of trauma. You might even get yourself PTSD or
just poverty. Yeah. Like my friend in the States that is now in Portland, and she's a smart girl. She's got all kinds of potential. She, given a different set of circumstances, would be getting her bar for her, you know, her lawyer exam or whatever like that. But her parents were drug addicts and partied, and as a result, she's barely able to take one course at a time in order to get herself an education so that she can not work a skillless service industry job, right?
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with her potential. It has nothing to do with her intelligence. It has nothing to do with her anything like that. It's purely the dice roll that she was given. She woke up in this world and her parents were not able to facilitate anything. So it is what it is, right? I think the vast majority of people that's the case. So, you know, you're pretty privileged if your parents can provide you lots of stuff, or well, somehow most of the people I know who owned a house before they were 30 did so because their parents paid the down payment and everything like that. So, yeah, it's really, it's a huge advantage. I mean, I don't care about the advantage for myself because I'm I'm still in a gigantic state of privilege, but you know, even though I wasn't even close to rich, I was poor growing up and everything like that. But privilege comes in more way than just money. If it was just money, then I'd be in the doghouse too. But I feel like I've been given a great advantage, and yeah, I can sucks for the people who want to be better people. I can't even imagine wanting to be a lawyer and being stuck as fucking Adam W. You know?
Who's Adam W?
That's me.
Ah, yeah. Adam William.
Yeah. No, but I mean, if I wanted to be a lawyer or I wanted to be a doctor, I could fucking, that'd be depressing.
Right.
Because I've never had that life. My parents, I think my sister is the only person who graduated high school. Yeah. You know, and I've got like cousins and stuff who might have graduated high school, but we're not a university attending family. We just don't. Yeah. None of us. Nobody expected it. Nobody prepared for it. Nobody ever said that, you know, this is part of the program. Yeah. Some kids, literally, it's taken for granted.
Yeah.
It's literally taken for granted that you're going to go to university.
Oh yeah.
Like you don't even really have a choice.
Yeah, whereas you're going.
I didn't have a choice either.
Yeah.
And my choice was that I wasn't going.
Yeah.
Right. So if I wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor or something like that, I'd be pretty pissed. But wanting to be a hippie and charlatan, it's worked out perfectly. I could be those things without any degree.
Are you self-taught, or did you take any kind of like a 3 or 4 month course in any of the media that you work in, like say for example photography?
Oh no, 100% autodidactic, self-taught.
Nice.
Yeah, and yeah, I think it's a self-taught field anyway. Media, film, and music, right? Because before film, I was a musician and recorded all my own stuff and, you know, all that sort of shit too, right? Mm-hmm. Using Pro Tools and Cakewalk and Cubase and MIDI and all that sort of shit from teens up. And then with the video, but I think it's entirely, it is a self-taught atmosphere. If you do take any schooling, the advantage to schooling is networking and meeting other people. Even if you take a school course, it might save you time on having to learn, but you have to learn what you have to learn either way.
Yeah.
And then what school's going to tell you is meager at best. And so you have to learn how to learn. The difference between, and I've said it before, I say it all the time, the difference between a professional and an amateur is a professional knows where to look for the answer. They're not going to know the answer. Right.
They're going to know, look.
Yeah, in visual effects, because that's what I was in mostly, but in visual effects, you're not even expected to. Like maybe if you just did it like recently. Otherwise, you'd know where to look. You know how to put things together to make them work. You know how things can be. You might have like some idea, but there's really good chances that you're just simply going to have to look for it. You know, same thing with like a lot of different things. You never memorize what you can look up instantly. Mm-hmm. Right. But
yeah.
Now, as far as cameras go, cameras are you have to understand how the camera works. You have to understand how the audio works. You have to understand. And I think that that's a benefit to people, whether or not they're technophiles or not, you know, like ghost hunter people. You want to be a ghost hunter, then please.
You got to learn how to pick up the house's frequencies.
Well, it would be super nice if they learned a little bit about mics and cameras and stuff like that, because it would go a long way in eliminating false positives.
Yeah.
And it would also go a lot of way in eliminating false negatives, if there is such a thing. I'm not a believer in ghosts, but if there was a ghost, setting up a test to detect ghosts that's really bad is probably a bad way to detect ghosts.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Like, setting up a thermal signature camera on something that is wooden would be a bad idea. Right? Like if it was a life form and you set up a thermal camera, or if it was like something that's even thermally conductive, very thermally conductive, like metals or something, then you could use that. But to use it on wood, you'd be like, well, what do you hope to see there? Because the thermal camera is simply not going to pick up anything interesting with wood. It's just not. A microphone, with the range that microphones have, you'd have to really sit down, and then you could say, okay, well, here's the different microphone technologies, here's their sensitivities, and here's their frequency sensitivity. Like they're going to have a decibel sensitivity and a frequency sensitivity, right?
Yeah.
They're literally going to be able to vibrate at certain frequencies based off of their material properties or not.
Yeah.
And why would you think that a ghost is going to be able to produce a vibration that microphone's going to be? Like that microphone particularly, why that microphone? So if ghost hunters could at least justify their technology, then they'd probably learn, oh boy, this is dumb. There's no reason that this mic would ever pick up a fucking ghost to begin with.
Yeah.
There's no reason why this camera should be ever expected to pick up
If you can't see it with your eyes, what would an extra sensitive device do? What would it pick up? It would have whatever the camera picks up, you would have to be able to pick up too. It just makes no sense, because if there is a ghost and it's an ethereal spirit, you're telling me it has to be a physical thing, but it's not a physical thing, right? No, it doesn't work. It has to be a physical thing to be detected, whether by a camera or by your own ears or your own senses. Like if you see something there, it can't just be a what's it called? Essentially a hologram being projected from where?
I don't know about your senses. I don't know about your senses, but a camera for sure, because a camera's got very gross, simple censoring, very gross and very simple. Whereas when you think of something, or if you think of the pink beach ball in your mind, and you can imagine a pink beach ball, then there's electronics going around in your brain that are producing this imagery. And when I say something, it goes into your ear, but then it has to get translated electrically in your brain, right? So there's this processing portion. There is a possibility, at least in my mind, the theory that a person's brain has the potential to be sensitive to low voltage phenomena that a camera or a microphone would never be able to pick up. Right? So like, if you can kind of imagine, if you were to be able to squeeze your brain against somebody else's brain, so that the neural signal went from their brain to your brain.
Ugh.
That gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah. Now, on some other level, if there was something that could produce any kind of voltage, and it could not produce a high voltage, but it could produce just enough voltage, it would be more efficient use of that voltage to stimulate your brain in a way that gives you an experience than it would be to like try to create corporeal shit, like knocking on a table or something, which is like the kinetic energy required to knock on a table. If you were to like translate the ghost energy into the kinetic energy that it requires to knock, that's like,
it would have to be a shit ton.
A shit ton per knock, right?
Yeah.
So to be able to sustain some kind of a kinetic energy flow, like in order to make a sound, like if somebody, you know, you hear the, like for something that was a non-physical organism to produce that that waveform in the air is going to then take a kinetic energy transfer from some other energy to kinetics. And again, and at that point, now you're just losing it, because that's way too much energy. Too much energy, you know. And the ghost movies where they can't touch anything unless they like get up all the focus and juice, and you know, that would be the kind of the same thing, except for it probably wouldn't actually happen.
It's just thinking about the belief in ghosts. Why would you do that to yourself? Why would you believe the possibility that you yourself could, first of all, you have to admit that you believe in there being some kind of an afterlife. It doesn't necessarily have to be heaven or hell or whatever. It doesn't have to be a religious thing. But if you believe there is something spiritually that your spirit might go off to next, you're now saying that there's a chance that you you get trapped on Earth.
Yeah, you're cursing yourself basically.
That's some twisted fucking shit, man. Like,
although a better alternative than just like blinking out, maybe for some people. You know, if you curse yourself to roam the earth for infinity because you believed in ghosts, not so bad. I never know, right?
Yeah,
could suck. Suck.
Yeah, because you could be all this. You could just be pure awareness with no senses. It would be, it'd be a kind of like an autistic existence, I would presume, being like, it would be like the reverse. Instead of being no, it'd be the same thing. It'd be, you'd be overloaded by sensory, and I'm talking about like if you're a ghost, but you wouldn't have any physical way to deal with it. It would just be awareness. It would be like no way of touching tables or whatever, because you're not made out of anything physical. You're just pure awareness.
Depends on what kind of ghost you are too.
Yeah, well, I don't fuck with those like Slimer ghosts or whatever. What's it called?
Poltergeist?
Yeah, but like, what were they supposed to be made out of? They call
ectoplasm.
Yeah. I don't fuck with ectoplasm. It just sounds like
the Huna actually have a really cool belief system as far as ghosts go, and the Huna believe that ghosts are a product of a brutal death, where part of a person's consciousness is severed from the whole during death, and it leaves two different parts of a mind left over. One which is volatile and dangerous, and one which is pretty chill. So it just depends. If your consciousness is severed from your body and becomes radicalized and floats away, then it is more or less like it is poltergeist like, because it's a personality that has no memories, it has no subconscious, it has no identity really, like insofar as stable constant identity. It is just a volatile, fiery, impulsive ego, essentially. And so the other one is if the unconscious gets detached, gets severed. And then what you're left with is, rather than the consciousness, it is literally the memories, the identity in the sense of consistent, you know. So anyway, the two different ghost types, once they're severed from the person on death, they roam around for a little bit before they can inhabit somebody else.
Ooh.
Inhabiting somebody else is really the goal. If they're a personality type, the conscious, and they inhabit somebody else, then they actually wrestle the consciousness of that person for domain of the body.
Yeah.
If they win, then the body has a new personality that is now controlling it. Right? If they don't win, then they still might occupy, but they'll occupy a lesser zone of the person, and they'll have this personality conflict where this other personality will appear and will be able to control them for a short period of time, and then if the unconscious portion then occupies a person, that changes them by giving them memories that they never had before, and by giving them identities that they never had before. And it causes phenomenon like past life experiences. And suddenly you're a guy named Frank that grew up in Massachusetts, and you don't know why, right? So the Huna really do believe this. This is their system. And yeah, I mean, the people who are possessed by an unconscious ghost are usually pretty okay with it. They're usually pretty happy. People who are possessed by a conscious ghost usually face some kind of a struggle to control themselves, to be the conscious person in their form. And that would be like if you're going to have like a anti-possession, some kind of an exorcism of some kind in the Huna religion, that would be the reason, because you've got like a consciousness inhabiting your body that's literally fighting you for control.
Sheesh.
So, I mean, these are just stories. Obviously, we don't have to believe in anything in order to humor them or consider them, but an interesting perspective, interesting way of looking at things. And that's in the Huna are in Hawaii. It's not an easy religion to crack, but
it's not an easy culture to crack. Like, I have a buddy who's from Hawaii. He lives there, and we talk every once in a while. And one night we spent 2 hours just talking about how way back in the day, like probably not even that long ago, like 400 or 500 years ago, when they were still, the white guys haven't found them out yet, and they were still bouncing back and forth from island to island. And everyone's related, right? Everyone came from one lineage, apparently. Like it's actually a problem where like Hawaiians have to like make sure that they're not about to date their first or second cousin or whatever, because of the
wow.
Yeah. But it gets even more wild than that. So back in the day, if certain islands or whatever weren't doing so hot, they had to make a decision. Well, do we die? Do we starve? Or do we go travel down to our relatives' place and raid them? Like kill them, eat them, fucking steal what they got. Just like, really? And your guys are related? Like, yep. Sometimes you gotta, if you see uncle coming, you gotta go hide. Oh shit.
Sure. I mean, pretty much every culture could identify that they're related, though.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be common ancestors, like especially if you're like Jewish, or you come from another smaller body of people that choose to marry between members of their own ethnicity or whatever. Yeah.
I think
inevitable.
I think that should be a movement, a more pronounced movement, like mixing people's ethnicities, like not a forced thing, but like make it like a more cool thing instead of people just being tribal and shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you if you come from a genetic lineage that's got any fuckery or gibbliness or anything like that. Like if I was Ashkenazi, my wife would not be.
Yeah.
My children would then not be.
Right.
Right? Because you have to, their mom would have to be Ashkenazi in order for that to transfer down as far as a right.
Yeah.
And you know, that's a problem insofar as genetic diversity goes, because people do need genetic diversity. Fucking people of the same familial tribe, no, it's not actually. No, it's not. There's nothing chosen about it either. There's nothing superior. There's nothing. There's probably things about hereditariness that we don't understand, and there's going to be a hereditary advantage. You might be smarter as a result. You might have more of an advantage competitively. In which case, then it's kind of like, well, let's just do it until we can't. Like, you know, like if you could make sure that your children are going to be genetically superior. But in the case of, say, the Ashkenazi, and if I was Ashkenazi, I would want to participate in it.
Yeah.
Because the benefits aren't genetical. The benefits are cultural.
Yeah.
Right? Getting better job, finding a better place to live, having people support you in your life that aren't, you know, the 3 people that you grew up with. Having a community like that. Like if I was Jewish, I would 100% embrace the community simply for the benefits of the community that I do not have as just a dude, right? I don't have any perks. I don't get a discount on anything. I don't, you know, we don't have the family fucking floor guy, and there's a lot for community that benefits everybody. And it's just like these tiny little things where if you're a member of, if you're a Sikh, you know, in Surrey, you've got every fucking connection. Your kid's gonna get jobs. You're hooked up, right? Yeah. It's for real. It's not nothing fucking. You could call it racist or something like that, but that's dumb. It's the
that's
fact
lazy.
of the matter. The fact of the matter is that cultures, they favor each other, or they favor themselves over other cultures, normally, just naturally, and any type of community that results from it is going to benefit you. Even as something simple as a church. My girlfriend, actually, when she moved here, somebody said to her, "I'm surprised you're not a member of a church." Just because to move to a new country, you don't have anybody, you don't have any support, you don't have any, I mean, like, you know, even if you move to a new apartment, you need like 2 extra pairs of hands to clean the kitchen.
Yeah.
There's just stuff like that just doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a part of a church, you can say, "Hey, I'm moving next Sunday. Is there anybody who can give me a hand?" And there's a pretty good chance you get a truck.
Yeah.
And you get people that actually help you move. There's people that are like, "Do you need help packing?" You know, as a normal person, even with friends, people don't say, "Do you need help packing?"
No.
You're like, if you could,
I don't want to show up and nothing's in the boxes.
Exactly. Oh fuck, man! I'm pissed if I show up and there's fucking, if there's stuff ain't in the box. I'm like, okay, I'm coming back tomorrow.
Yeah, it's like, you know? What?
But no, when you're a member of a church or a temple or a synagogue or something like that, then you do find that generosity is at a greater discount. And you also have the opportunity to give back on the same level, right? Because there's other people who need assistance just like you do. And so maybe then 3 Sundays later, you're going to be helping somebody move their hedging in, because, you know, some old guy just wants some hedging and he doesn't fucking know a single person. So there you are, helping some guy with his hedge. There's Freemasonry's got a lot of it's got that element at least, but when you're the young guy in Freemasonry, that's your thing, right? Yeah. Welcome to, you're mowing the lawn and you're doing the things and you're setting up tables and
doing the cooking, doing the cleaning.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody trusts you to do the cooking, but at the very least you're doing the tables.
Yeah,
gonna do the floor after you're setting up the shit, and
Yeah.
If you're under 50, you're the only one there that's under 50. So welcome to that's your job now.
Oh no.
Well, whatever, right? Somebody's gonna do it.
Yeah.
They ain't gonna get it done itself.
Yeah.
It's not the worst job, that's for sure. But it just doesn't have that same mutual type of exchange that a church or something has. I'm really blowing smoke up churches and temples' asses in this conversation, which is funny because I am not a very big fan of them on the best day. And right now, the fucking news media, man, holy Jesus, I'd hate to be a Catholic church.
Oh yeah, shit.
Fucking get burned down and shit right now.
Yeah, like I think someone made the joke the other day saying the black metal bands have been moving to Canada.
Yeah. Fucking crazy.
It's not a good joke, but fuck. It's
people who would never listen to black metal that are doing it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, I would be fucking surprised if Indigenous people were even involved. I'd be surprised. I can imagine the odd young radical, who hangs out with the Vancouver downtown east side protesters / activists / people, right?
Yeah.
They're the homeless activists, and they like in Maple Ridge, the Ivan Drury guy. It just comes down to people who are literally lifestyle activists.
Yeah.
And
this is my identity. What?
Yeah. And
I lock myself to fucking doors with bicycle locks around my neck. Woo!
Yeah. As far as vandalism goes, if some fucking old Indigenous guy with a cane walked up and fucking put his hand in a thing of paint and then slammed it on the door of a church and said, my handprint will forever be on this church as a reminder of what you did to me.
Yeah.
And that was vandalism. I'd be like, holy Christ. I'd be moved. And anybody who took that fucking hand off would get their shit slapped.
Yeah.
But when it's a whole bunch of Caucasian liberal activist protester people perpetrating acts of violence against buildings for these ideologies that are like, okay, I don't know. It's really not helpful. Yeah. It's not helpful, and it's just there to stoke a fire. It's stupid.
All those churches, what are the chances they're gonna get rebuilt, right? So now you're just costing the community more money just to have these places rebuilt and
better, bigger.
Like, actually, you're doing them a favor. You're giving them a reason. So,
depends. Yeah. The bathroom in the church could be really bad. It could be, it could have really bad plumbing. It could be one of those things where it could cost $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 to redo the knob and knuckle wiring or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
And the church, the diocese simply can't afford it. Now they just did them a favor. Because as long as they rebuild within 12 months, their insurance is going to cover it. Yeah. The community will, if the insurance doesn't cover it, the community will throw in and pay for it.
Well, fuck! Look what happened with Notre Dame.
Oh, exactly.
That thing got saved like that. It wasn't even done burning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pay for it. No problem.
Literally, right? Yeah. And the churches are going to be the same thing. So yeah, they could have actually done the people a solid by getting rid of a building that couldn't be renovated because of laws, on 100-year-old plus buildings where maybe they did want to do something and they just simply couldn't do it because it's a heritage building now. You're fucked.
Yeah.
Or
maybe I could be wrong, but maybe a couple of them were actually newer ones, because I remember seeing a picture of one of them and it looked like it had some pretty modern masonry done.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really no loss. Like, I don't even give a shit about you. It's a horrible thing. You shouldn't be arsoning and burning anything down, but it's when it's like, you know, this building was founded in 1840 by somebody.
Who the fuck cares? Like, shit.
Well, I do. Like
as
far as like burning it down goes.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck what somebody's ideologies are. You shouldn't be burning down a 100-plus-year-old building just because, right? Like,
but those buildings should be replaced. Like, I like Japan's got a pretty cool system. Every 25 years, new car. Every 25 years, new building. Even like they're
very wasteful.
Yeah, they're what's it called? They're even their ancient temples or whatever. They'll replace them every 25, 30 years with like the same architecture and the same style of carpentry or whatever. But they have a rule. They're like, yo, we gotta have new, top of the line, ready to go stuff every so many years. Like, they have a threshold and then they uphold it or whatever. That's why that's why we have all of these Delicas over here. It's because they used to be the police
really?
Main vehicle. Yeah.
Fucking,
yeah.
Wow. Those things are fucking horrible. Is that in the building?
Oh, maybe.
Weird. Some fucking dog barking. It sounds like it's right in the building.
No.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of approaching things. I mean, I wouldn't want us to have a policy like that here because it's super wasteful and there's really no point.
Yeah, I like concrete. Concrete's pretty cool. I think more buildings should be little miniature skyscrapers, if you will. Like regular, like, instead of having the Vancouver Special, the 2-floor, shoebox house, make a 2-floor shoebox concrete house, right? Concrete's expensive, but it lasts longer. It's seismically and reinforced and saves on trees.
Yeah, I don't think we need to save trees at all.
No, you don't think?
Oh God, no! Cut all the fucking trees down. No, literally, right? Like, the idea that saving trees helps the environment is silly.
No, it probably does the worst thing. Like, there's got to be like a principle that's like the more good you try to do on Earth, there's literally, yeah. It's called progressivism. Yeah, and everybody fucks it up. Yeah. There's optimums. You'd have to take every different tree species and look at its optimum, and then in environmental conditions. But there's going to be a rate. There's going to be an optimal, say, 5 to 10 year period in a tree's growth where it gets the most mass, right? So in the very beginning of a tree's growth, you end up having a very fast growth rate. And you go from like a visible thing, you go from a small sapling to a reasonably sized tree. And you could say that that's a pretty good efficient rate. As far as from 0 to that, if you were to like calculate that rate, then you'd be like, oh, wow. Now, if you were to look at it as a mass of tonnage per year, the tonnage per year is where you start to get your efficiency. Right? Every ton of tree is a ton of carbon. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Literally. Yep. So now there's going to be like between year 15 and year 25 in a tree's life. Let's just pick the poplar or something like that. At which point those have a half ton per year. Right? So now in the first 15 years, it goes from 0 tons to 3 tons, say, But then that's only 3 tons. But now from 15 to 25, it does a half ton per year growth. So the actual real advantage for a tree's growth isn't in the very beginning of its life, because that is just establishing the mass base, the base for the mass. There's then the next period of growth is where the most mass per year occurs, which again, now you could say, like, you know, let's just for an example, half ton per year. Now, after the 25-year mark, now it'll drop to around a quarter ton per year, because the tree's growing slower at the 25-year mark now, right? So between 25 years and 200 years, it will still grow, but the rate of growth in ton per year is slower. So what you'd want to do then is you'd want to get all the trees to 25 years, cut them down, have saplings going somewhere else, like a baby room, and get the saplings planted, say year 5, and then have 20 years of growth, knowing that the last 10 years is going to be the optimal carbon base, but you need the first 10 years to get the root zones and all that sort of stuff. And then boom, cut it down. And then the only other factor is, at that point, you've got economy, and you've got somebody who's got property who has to grow this shit, and has incentive for profit just to be able to feed themselves so that they don't die. And then we have to hope that whoever plants the trees has a plan that makes it efficient for them to wait 20 years before they cut the tree down, rather than waiting 15, because they might say, well, you know, it might take 20 and the last 10 are the most efficient, but I can't wait 20, I can only wait 15. Now the last 5 are the most efficient, but the last 5, it's getting a half ton per, so that's 2.5 tons, whereas the first was only 3. So it's really, you know, now you've got a 8.5 ton tree, with its efficiency as a carbon sink being impeded by the fact that a farmer needs to make money, but it's still fucking 6, you know, it's better than nothing. So even if we had to sort that out, so all the different tree species then will have all these optimums, and cutting a tree down and processing a tree into things like wood and paper, and then landfilling it all in the end.
Yeah.
Or composting it, or recycling it. I'm not a fan of recycling paper or tree. I don't think that we should recycle any sort of pulp products whatsoever. I think we should bury it into the ground.
And just add it back to the biosphere or whatever?
Add it back to the biosphere, yeah. Because when you recycle, you're actually releasing the carbon a lot of the time.
Because the factories,
Well, yeah, you're producing air carbon and consuming hydrocarbon in order to process the tree back into its pulp. But any combustion and any loss is just losing it back into carbon. If the whole idea is to sink carbon into trees, then put them into the fucking ground.
Yeah, put them back.
Burying garbage is not a bad thing at all. Burying garbage does not hurt the planet at all. The fucking stuff came from the ground.
It can go back.
It can go back to the ground.
Yeah.
Really.
I like Bill Nye's take on it, because he's like, dude, I hope that one day we figure out how to mine that shit. He's like, you put it back in the ground, let it stay there for a few thousand years. Who knows what kinds of new stuff, weird stuff that could be useful, could be really poisonous, but could find some useful stuff by mining up your old shit.
You can imagine 200 years from now, there's going to be a museum for shit like that. Stuff that they dug out. But 200 years is, as far as a landfill goes, is really fuck all, right? 200 years, you're going to get garbage bags that have perfectly preserved steak. Like a steak dinner was thrown away into a garbage bag in 1984, and in 2104 it's a fucking steak in a garbage bag, because there's no air. It's whatever anaerobic fermentation can exist will happen, but aerobic decomposition will be prevented in a lot of it. for at least for a while. And at that point, by the time the steak gets decomposed, the bag might also be being decomposed.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing stopping the bag. Like the idea that plastic is permanent is silly. But there's no way plastic's permanent.
Petroleum plastic.
No, there's no way. It doesn't work like that. No. There's nothing toxic in petroleum that a microbe is going to be like. Petroleum plastic isn't like abiotic or something.
Yeah,
they'll fucking eat it. It's just the formation of hydrocarbons into the particular materials that we're making are not common materials, and so there's never been a microbe that has evolved naturally over millions of years to produce an enzyme to break the bonds to be able to consume it. But that's like pretty much guaranteed to happen, right? If we took any material and we ground it up and composted it, just grind it up, compost it, and wait, pretty much guarantee that there's going to be a microbe that'll evolve, or that already existed, and that just existed in small enough numbers that we didn't really notice it until boom. When they looked in nylon pools or pools of water and affluent pools, whatever, runoff pools and nylon factories, they ended up discovering nylonase, an enzyme produced by bacteria that were opportunistic and figured out how to eat the nylon.
That's dope.
Yeah.
And then what do they poop? What does it poop out afterwards?
Oh, who knows? Some starch or something.
Yeah.
Sugar.
Weird.
Something like that.
Just poops out of sugar.
Yeah.
So weird.
It was the same thing as the kid who discovered the plastic bag eating microbes. Will eat a plastic bag. Thin plastic. Plastic is biodegradable at this point with microbe. It's just how long does it take, right?
Yeah. Well,
not that long in the scheme of things.
No, like 30 years, maybe.
They're saying. I think they said that at that point it would take about 200 years.
Yeah.
But
it depends.
Fuck all. Like Jesus Christ.
Like is the bag in the ocean getting beamed by sunlight? Probably break down a little bit quicker. Like a place where there's some motion. Agitated.
That's different.
Yeah.
Because that's how plastic gets smaller. That's not how plastic goes away. Yeah. Plastic in the ocean gets into tiny little nanoparticles from UV degrading, where it just breaks and breaks and breaks. It's almost like at that point the plasticizer evaporates from the material, or and then once the plasticizer's evaporated, it's no longer a plastic. It's no longer bendy. It's breaky. And so it starts breaking and shattering into smaller and smaller and smaller bits until you've got little nanoparticles. Again, who knows? Who knows as far as microbes? What will become, opportunistic?
Bugs are weird, man. They'll figure it out.
Absolutely. Absolutely they will. And it's we're not giving them anything weird either. We're giving them the same shit that they've always had. Yeah. They've always had hydrocarbons. They've always had organic life, right?
Yeah, well, that's where petroleum comes from. It's decomposed from millions and millions of years ago, algae and other whatever.
Diatoms. Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if it's like, if petroleum is literally the first, what is it called? Algae or chloroform or whatever, the first basic plant-like being structure or whatever. I wonder if that's what it is. If it's from like 4 or 5 billion years ago.
Literally, that's it. But it's diatoms and other. Definitely prokaryotes, right?
Man, so you know how they they've been studying, I think it's neutrinos or whatever, like the really small particles that like they pass through us every day, but you don't really notice them.
Where they've got a lab 5 miles down.
Yeah, and it looks really fucking cool. It looks like a setting from like a James Bond movie or whatever. It's like it's got like a pool of like distilled water or whatever, and then like the walls have like a weird metallic reflecting kind of a deal. It looks very science fiction, and all it is just to detect zoo.
Yeah, it has to be ultra sensitive.
Yeah,
and it can't be compromised from anything else, right?
Yes. So I'm curious if these these stores of crude oil that have been under the Earth's surface for billions of years, if they have like any effects from neutrinos.
Who knows?
So yeah, that and like what would be the purpose of looking for anything like that? I don't know, but just hit me. I was just like, oh. I guess it would be like evidence of the early Earth, like what the radiation was like that it was receiving from the sun or whatever, because the atmosphere was different. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of trying to build up an idea of something that inspired me by Roger Penrose. Like he has an idea that like the universe is a cycle, right? But he talks about how like, okay, let's go down the line that the universe just all becomes black holes, and then at some point all those black holes evaporate, and so then all you have left is just a bunch of photons traveling into infinity, right? There's no more matter. Everything got gobbled up, broken down, turned into information, right? Just straight up data, light, and then poof, that's it. He figures, well, at that point, if there's no mass, then the universe kind of forgets how big it is, and then it kind of just like comes back to the starting point or whatever. And so he part of his thing, his idea, he's like, well, I predict that we might find these ripples, kind of like how like gravitational waves work, when two big bodies like black holes smash into each other, it sends a gravitational wave. He figures that perhaps inside if you're looking at the cosmic radiation background or something like that, you should be able to see these ripples from all of these previous version of the universe having all of these ripples of gravitational waves or something like that, which I like that idea. I like it a lot. It kind of like it doesn't stop or doesn't create like a starting point. It helps me just think of the universe just always have been doing this cycle, expansion contraction, and it's just kind of like it's almost like, if you want to be wooey about it, it's almost like it's God needing a cosmic dough, just constantly making some real kick-ass pastry, but gotta really work on it. Gotta rip it apart, put it back together again, rip it apart, put it back together again. It's kind of also where I had that idea of 1 + 2 + 1d or whatever, that I was like, well, why not? What was it? 1 divided by 0.5 plus 1d or something like that. I get that. I got the idea of like a simple 1 or 2 dimensional thing. Well, how does one dimension create another dimension? Well, it just halves itself and then does something like that, right? Of just like the idea just comes from like, well, maybe that's a natural property of the mechanism that is the cyclical universe.
Although it is hard to half a whole.
Yeah, that's
the problem.
yeah, you run into, I guess, thermodynamics kind of, the laws of thermodynamics kind of say like, you can't do that. Well, why not?
Well, it's just, it's a half to half a whole. Like there is no half a dimension.
Yeah, that's right.
There is none. There's no half dimension.
No, it's
unless you want to just like in my model, a dimension that exists currently is a half dimension.
Yeah.
Right, because the other half will annihilate it.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That
everything that exists is existing as an incomplete state or as a potential. Yeah. Really, that's it. Is that everything exists as a potential? And once it's realized, then it's no longer there. But as long as it's done. Potential, then the potential creates tension. The potential creates
a singularity, perhaps, like a event horizon of sorts.
Kind of. It's more like anticipation or potential. Really, it's potential. Tension.
Tension. Yeah,
pressure.
That's a good one.
Tension.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know. This is where it starts to get squirrely. Is when you talk about, like, when I hear smarter people than me explain some properties of the universe and physics and shit like that, there is relationships, and the relationships create tensors, or they create differentials, and the differential itself is a potential, right?
Man.
We're talking about undifferentiated matter. We're talking about potential. When we're talking about like chaos or it's potential. Even in the body, when we're talking about undifferentiated cells or T cells or something like that, this is a potential. Every time that you look at a plant has a node, looks like a little knuckle on the branch.
Yeah.
And inside that knuckle is a bunch of cells, and those cells can be anything. Those cells are ready to become root or leaf or branch or anything.
Anything it needs.
They're a potential cell with yes, they're a cell, so they're not a potential in the case of that. But what cell they are literally exists as a potential state. Mm-hmm. So its state has not yet been decided, and it currently holds 5 potential states, and how that is relevant then to the way that, when we're trying to understand like some kind of a quantum potential. I'd hate to use that word when I was describing the dimensional stuff, because if I start using words like quantum, then I'm going to lose everybody. But the potential of the tension that's created when one branch of a dimension exists and the other branch is yet to exist is the same sort of thing. And we see it throughout the various sciences. It's really weird and it's hard to understand, and it's like, superpositioning or some bullshit like that. It's easy to get metaphysical or super hippie about it, but when you look at that cell at the knuckle of the plant and go, okay, that cell could be a branch, it could be a leaf, it could be a root, and all it has to do is get some sort of a decision made on it, where now its state is decided. That's about the closest real world example to potential.
That makes sense.
That I can drum up.
Yeah.
Even though it's not the same potential as in the dimensional stuff. If you wanted a visualization of the potential for the other stuff, you would have to look at an ungrounded charge. Electrical.
Yeah.
Right?
A static charge.
Static charge, yeah. Or like a taser that's still got a little bit of juice in the electrodes that needs to
go somewhere.
Arc somewhere. Yeah. That would be a better description of the potential of dimensionalism, or the potential of time in the my dimensional model, where it is literally like building up a charge, and the end result of that charge, the end game, is going to be to ground it, to arc it, do something. But once it's arced, it's gone.
Yeah,
it's done. Its time's taken up. It's done. Its energy has been redistributed back into the universe, much like one of those little dimensional bits that I'm describing. And as long as it's not, as long as that it's in a state of potential, then it's volatile. It's an energy potential for something else, right?
Yeah.
Or it's like other things can utilize that energy potential. How it becomes an energy potential, I don't know. But there's other things in the universe that do exist like that. The relativity of the potential of the particular substance isn't the same as its relativism of potential on other things. Right? Much like the electrical charge, the static charge, to itself, it is just simply a buildup of electrons, whereas to something else, it could alter its material properties. Say, if there's electroplating involved in the arcing, or if there's it can have effect. It can be effective outside of just going, even though its own universe, in its own experience, it's going is the only thing that it does. Outside of its own perspective, the effects of arcing can have wider results.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Fucking analogies, man. We're really stretching with this one. But it is time, and time's a weird topic.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking we were going to be on completely different trains too, like, more like dates, times, dates, significances. But, the theory of time in itself is really more interesting.
Yeah, because I'm most comfortable with time. Like I said, like it's a frequency, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical thing. Like it doesn't have to have a wave. It doesn't have to have a sign. It might, there might be a way of doing that. Like there might be something to that time crystal thing. I wish I paid attention to it more, because it might have opened up a nice a cooler information or an idea. But as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I'm in tune with my knowledge, time doesn't flow or exist. It's just kind of the result of things happening. We have a sense of time, whether it is a fundamental component to the structure of the universe or not. That's not really. I can't think about it like anything other than it's just moment over moment over moment over moment over moment, and like you said, like the last one doesn't exist anymore. And if we could somehow rewind time, it would be really interesting to go back somewhere and to have rewound everything for yourself. Because it'd be kind of weird if a time machine, if it was able to rewind time or go back in time, you send a vessel back, but then there's just nothing there. that would be like the most insane, spooky movie. Did you ever see the Time Traveler? I think that's what it was called.
I don't know.
Oh, it was cool. It was like late 90s, early 2000s. Guy makes a time machine to save his wife or something like that, and like ends up going way the hell into the future, where humans have devolved back into like kind of like Stone Age kind of things, and then they get hunted by these ancient humans that evolved into like this weird hive like structure where like they've got like these really smart ones that like psychically control all of these savage beasts. It's a wild ride.
Kind of like ants or bees or something then.
Yeah.
Hive mind.
But the way that that his time machine worked is he creates this field around his vehicle, and that's how it's almost like the way it looked almost like the idea of a warp engine, like warping space around the vehicle and using that to propel the vehicle versus having, chucking mass from fuel, like you bent space. So it's like, I guess he bent time or whatever and traveled that. But then you would have to, if that were the case, you would have to find out, like, is the fabric of space that's what we call time, space-time. There's not space and time. Space is time and time is space, right?
Might not be the best way to describe it, because we really do visualize space.
Yeah.
It's just the fact, like, when you look at the marble rolling around in the gravity well, every part of that visualization is space. The fact that the marble is moving,
that's time.
That's it.
Yeah.
So the actual fabric part, really, I personally think that it's a more confusing. It does people more harm than good as far as visualization. Thinking of space time as that fabric. Well, when it's really space, and time should just be assumed.
Yeah. Because, well, it's kind of weird though, because movement does slow down the stronger the gravity is, right? Like if you're by a black hole, but you're far enough away that you're affected by its gravity, but you're not close enough that it's gonna pull you into the event horizon, your time is gonna go by slower, I think, or whatever like that. But then when you're on like a place that's not so massive, like Earth or whatever, time goes by the way we experience it. But
and that would be slower relative, right?
Yeah.
Like when you said that time exists as a moment, it's not really how it exists. Okay. Time exists as a non-broken, fluid, simultaneous thing.
Here and now.
Yeah. So if you were to break it, you'd only be breaking it as far as relativity to something. So you could count time in terms of atom moments or something like that, in which case then you're going to have atom moment, atom moment, atom moment, atom moment. But time itself is indivisibly, it's infinitely indivisible. So you could slice it as much as you want or as little as you want and call it whatever you want to be useful to you as a calculation or something. But the actual thing itself, A, doesn't exist, B, doesn't have periodicity. There's no actual periodicity in time as it existed itself. Right?
Yeah.
We create periodicity to make it useful so that we have something to talk about. Right?
Yeah.
Otherwise we
have something to. Yeah, we need lines to calculate.
We need to measure stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Terms and volumes and measurements and systems, and otherwise it's not. We can't calculate the distance of a star. Time is useful for us for that, but it is, it's, yeah, I mean, it obviously doesn't exist like that. What's less obvious is maybe that, well, I suppose it's, anytime we try to talk about it, we're going to reach a paradox because we're talking about something that, again, probably doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the difference between two things, the difference between something and itself even. It's just it's a measurement of difference. It's a differential thing. The fact that things change, the fact that nothing's the same when we observe them moment to moment is an actual phenomenon. You know, call it what you want, but we call it time. But we have these really gross, chunky moments of observation. And in a moment for us, there's bazillions of cells in our body have died, you know?
Yeah.
One moment for a human is such a big, gross period of time that atoms come and go and come and go and come and go and come and go and come and go a trillion times just in one of those moments. All of our, again, like, there's massive microbial death. There's massive amounts of shit happens in the real universe in between our moments. So, and even if you start slicing them pretty small, it's only relative to something else, right?
Yeah.
Take away the something else, and what is it? It's just observation.
Yeah.
For me, time and consciousness are so interwoven, and I can't see what time is in its simplest state aside from consciousness.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing for consciousness, is if that is the case, then it's a benchmark. It's
consciousness. It's time's awareness of its self and the space it's created.
Matter's awareness of itself through time, right?
Wow.
But that time itself is the consciousness. It would just simply be the light on.
Yeah.
It would be the Godhead, or whatever you'd want to call it, right? The creator, the
cosmic zeitgeist.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Because it observing everything is producing it, or is facilitating it. Is a vector for it, is the dimension itself for it, or something, right? Pretty fucked up, but yeah.
Yeah. Fuck.
How do it all relate?
Light, man. If it all came from light, and it all goes back to light, theoretically speaking, and somewhere in between there, light just has to, I guess, get squished enough together where it has
light would have to get created.
Yeah.
Light would have to be created. That's where you start to get into the kind of like the genealogy of divinity. Is the genealogy of divinity is traditionally people trying to make sense of the origins of things. So even in Greece, you have Kronos.
Yeah.
Kronos is the father of Zeus. Zeus is the father of the Titans. The Titans are this archetypal thing to the Greeks, but then there's also the gods, like the normal gods, which are also the children of Zeus. But Kronos and Uranus, or whatever like that, you're starting to get into the the origin story or their philosophy of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg, the time or the space or the shit like that. And I have no idea where the fuck I was going with that.
Well, what comes first? Well, then it almost feels like the dimensions of time that you're proposing in your model have to have some kind of a physical property, almost. But the simple beginnings of your model is before there's anything physical to begin with.
It's got to have an existential property, not physical, but existential.
Yeah.
So we can understand then that there are non-physical things, right? Like proto-physical materials.
Yeah.
And then there's other things too, like there's fields from, like the fields that are produced from, like say from a voltage. You get the voltage through a cable, and the voltage through the cable produces a magnetic field. The magnetic field is just as real as anything else because you can demonstrate it. But the magnetic field is like this. I hate to say it's emergent because I think that's a misuse of the term emergent.
Generated or produced.
Yeah, it's a byproduct. And it's just as real, but it's unfortunately really hard to hammer down.
Yeah, it's
right?
Don't want to use the word quantum, but it's some quantum ghosty stuff.
Yeah, it's more like a wave than a particle.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you have the particle state is then the electricity in the form of voltage and amplitude or frequency and amplitude. And then that produces this other non-physical field state. So there's this marriage between physical material and a non-physical field state. That where does that begin? Where does that originate? And when we're starting to talk about creating very small single or two-dimensional structures, where does the field state, as far as being able to communicate between structure parts, right? So now at this point, we don't have to have two structures that are connected. We just have to have two structures that are close enough that the field is producing, so you've got voltage in one structure that produces a field that, if you get another structure close to it, induces the voltage in that structure from the field. Things like that, right? So then you can have shared information without having actual structure. So the superstructures don't even necessarily have to be connected. They can just be in the vicinity of each other, or they might be connected at some other point, but then simply reach the vicinity of something else, or whatever like that, right? And that's where you start to get like arcing, or the relationship between two different handednesses, like or just different phenomenon that can produce different effects, right? Much in the same way as electromagnetics or chemistry or whatever like that, where, now we can start to use simple structures to produce more complex structures that actually can start to interface with each other. Because interfacing with each other is also a huge thing. And it's a big problem, actually. I found it. It's easy to say something like interface with each other, but when you're building a model that is units of time arranged in symmetry, now it's like, what are we talking about, right? Like, how do you go from a point in time to a voltage with a magnetic field? There's a lot there. There's a lot to fill in. A lot of gaps, probably imperfect, could be just simply entirely flawed. Yeah. Who knows? Somebody else's problem. I'm just a I'm just a hippie. Think about this shit. Get a migraine, write it down, and then let somebody else deal with it.
Yeah.
50 years from now, I'm way too dumb myself. I'll try to figure out like relativity one day.
Like general relativity?
Yeah.
Like E equals MC squared?
Oh, E equals MC squared is super complicated compared to where I need to start. I need to start. That's special relativity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that special relativity? I think general relativity is even simpler. Like general relativity is
I'm not sure.
More math.
I don't pay attention to that specifically. What I do pay attention to though is like E equals MC squared isn't even the full equation. It's like E cubed times M cubed equals C squared cubed or something like that. Like there's more numbers to it because it's
just like the reducto version for dumb people.
Yeah, just to get the idea palatable, even though but all it basically says is that energy and mass are the same thing. They're just at different states. So by that, it's like, well, how does nothing get pulled from, or how does something get pulled from nothing? The potential that something could exist is enough for it to manifest all of creation. And I it sounds stupid or whatever, but hey, it's a lot better than what we've been going with, or what we could go with. Like, why not? Why can't like Terence McKenna said it pretty cool and poetically. He like imagines like there's like a mirror that's traveling through space, and the reflection of it is all of what we experience, right?
So like a holographic universe.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's what he's directly expressing with that, or not. It's not a matter. But what it is, but like that's what, like the way I understand that is that transcendental object, he calls it. Like once everything comes back to it, I don't think you will ever, but that is what creates the notion of like, how did something come from nothing? Well, just the straight potential that life could exist, or not necessarily life, but just stars and planets could exist. So they did. There was no conscious effort. It was just didactyl, right? Is that the word? Didactyl.
I don't know.
I sent you a weird paper that I started reading called, I think it was called The Didactyl Universe. Pretty much just saying like it could, so therefore it is.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like it is, therefore it is, right?
Yeah.
Like it could leads to it is so quickly that it is, therefore it is. That's with dimensional and building up. There is really no creation ex nihilo. There's no creation from nothing. That's not part of the program at all. It's that everything that it comes from, it might appear differently, and it might appear less substantial. Rocks come from atoms, and if you were to just look at a single atom, you wouldn't even see it. It's too small, But when you see it in the form of a rock, you can see that it's all there. Now, would you call that atom nothing? No, you wouldn't, because it's really a thing.
It's a cloudy thing, but it's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go back into what creates what, there's really stuff all the way back there. So,
were we kind of talking about that last time? Like at the very small, as small as we can look level, there's still something there. It's probably really foamy and very sameness. Like you probably can't see if you were to shrink your consciousness and your body down to that scale. It probably, if there was anything to detect visually, it would all probably be very homogeneous, right? It would probably be very
everything on a small enough level would all look like a fucking honeycomb.
Yeah,
is basically everything would look like just a big honeycomb. It'd be different colored honeycomb bits, right?
Yeah.
So it's essentially, that's what everything looks like.
It's so crazy
when you zoom into it. Yeah. Hexagonal, like we were saying before with the atoms, a hexagonal honeycomb.
Yeah.
Zoom in.
So, mate, I want to pull up after we get off of this this podcast. I'm like, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna search up that time crystal video. I'll send it to you too. It's because there might be something to that. There might be something, and I don't know exactly what would be crystallizing the frequency of change, the frequency of matter purely moving. I
don't know.
I don't know. I wish. I really wish I.
I don't know. I mean, crystalline structure is in absolutely everything.
Yeah.
But it's a result of things having to get stuck together, and them having their own shape and having valence points. You know, like when you look at a chemical that's been drawn on a piece of paper. They usually skip carbon. They don't mention the carbon, but they'll,
because it's assumed. It's assumed.
Yeah, it's ubiquitous and everything. But everything else will be there, and then you can start to see the valence points. If you understand how many valences are on each element, then you're going to notice that, okay, well, this branch obviously has a valence left over, and then this branch has a valence left over, and whatever. You can then you could make predictions on how they're going to fit together, what types of structure they're going to take as far as crystalline structure. Pretty much everything's fucking crystalline structure, though, right?
Yeah.
You have particularly shaped objects, and you put them together, and it's just what happens.
Yeah, they fit.
They fit in a certain way.
Yeah.
You've only got so many facets. That's the Platonic solids. And the Platonic solids, even if you pull the Platonic part out and you just consider solids themselves, then the Platonic solids do a really good job of representing the shape of things in their smallest form. And if you put those together, then they end up creating geometric shapes. It's just, it is literally everywhere, and
just lattices on lattices on lattices on lattices on lattices.
Yeah. And then, people used to learn about this stuff back in the old days. We've gotten really dumb, but if you went to school in Greece, by the time you were our age, for sure, you'd have learned everything about language, and part of their language study in itself would be geometry, because each letter is shaped a particular way based off of the geometry that it's representing, and it's not a coincidence. Same as our letters, right? Just learning about letters and why people picked that shape for that sound.
Yeah.
In itself is a study. English isn't as profound as Greek. Greek, they really put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah.
English, they did put some thought into it. Latin, they put some thought into it. But Greek, they put a lot of thought into the shape of the letter, right? A lot of our letters in English are actually throwbacks from other languages, so we just kind of mushed them all together.
We stole everything.
You start to get things like the S. I actually asked on Facebook who everybody's favorite letter is. Mine's the K. My favorite letter is the K.
Yeah.
And the K holds a lot of interesting stuff. The K is like a great letter full of secrets that if you're interested in geometry, then the K should same as the G for obvious reasons. Maybe not obvious reasons, in fact. It might be one of those things that it's so fucking obvious that nobody realizes it. A lot of geometry is like that, as far as secret societies or fraternities or something like that. Like, you know, we've all seen the Masonic symbol. Nobody has any idea what they're looking at.
Like the what's it called?
Square and compass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like mass amounts is put into the publicized symbology.
Yeah.
Publicized symbology holds almost all the information that you could ever want.
Yeah.
If you looked at that symbol, you have basically everything about Freemasonry that's useful right there.
Yeah.
Period. But it's you'd have to know what you're looking for before you could find it. So, you know, it can be right there. That's the thing, is secrets are hidden in plain sight. The truest, greatest secrets are hidden in plain sight. Things like phi and pi. Really, you know, phi and pi are two things that just in and of themselves are worthy of attention.
What's phi used for?
Phi is the golden ratio.
Ah, okay.
So phi
so it's the exponentially grows and creates the spiral.
Yes.
Yeah.
Phi is contained in the Fibonacci sequence.
Ah, this hence phi. Okay, yeah.
No, Fibonacci is his name.
Yeah. But is that why it's called phi as well? Okay,
no.
okay.
Fibonacci is his name, and it's Fibon. Phi in Greek is Phi.
Yeah.
So the golden ratio is 1 to 0.618. So that's actually the K.
Okay.
Right. The K contains the golden ratio. So
that kind of like I because like I responded was like, is it because of this? And I sent you like a gif of an Ouroboros, or whatever. I literally thought that's what the K represented, was just like the not necessarily like the serpent eating itself, but I just looked at the K and I was like, okay, there's a line, and then the two legs, or the leg and the arm.
Yeah, that could be different, right? Like sometimes you have the line. Can you see that? No.
Yeah, it's a little overexposed, but
why is it so fucking overexposed? Can you hit the light for a sec?
Yeah, it shows up. Yeah.
So sometimes you have the line, and then you have the lesser than symbol.
Yeah.
And so that's the way it'll be here.
Yeah.
But other fonts, and the good fonts, you start with a vertical line, then halfway up, and again, geometry is about relationships.
Yeah.
Geometry is not about symbology. Like, it's not about putting lines on a piece of paper. It's about the angles and the relationships between the lines that are present. So now 50% up, we have a 45-degree angle going up. Right? Now, on this 45-degree angle, at the ratio of 1 to 0.618 is where we start the next line.
Okay.
Right? So in the one font, it's literally at the base of the two lines, or at the base of each other.
Yeah.
The other one, it starts at about 0.618 to 1. And then it comes out at 90 degrees.
Okay.
Like oh.
Yeah.
Like that.
That's so cool.
Right? Now this right here, this relationship is where it starts to get important, because that is going to yield you the similar ratios as the pentagram.
Oh, shit. No way.
Yeah. Thank you. Phi, if you were to repeat phi, you get a pentagram. So pentagram itself is the symbol or the unicursal geometry representation of pi, or phi, not pi. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you want a pi, you'd probably have a circle, but
yeah, almost. There's no, isn't it true? Like, there's no such thing as a perfect circle, because every time you like zoom in on it or whatever, it'll be more like a true circle will always have like a kind of like a notch in it. You know what I'm saying? Like
aliasing.
Yeah.
Aliasing is the stepping in like a graphic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'd always be aliased, but if you zoom in, enough, it should be aliased?
Yeah. It'll never be a perfect like curve.
Interesting.
Yeah.
If it was vectored though, like in graphics, you have a raster, and a raster means like a JPEG, right? So if you zoom into it, it's shit. You zoom in and you're just blowing up the pixels and it looks like poo. Whereas if it's not rastered, if you have a vector, then that's actually a mathematical formula saying that this is the relationship between these points and these lines. And if you scale into it, the relationship scales with it. So you don't get any aliasing, because it's never been baked or rastered into a final image like a JPEG. It's a potential final image previous to being finalized. So again, that's a fucking like an undifferentiated cell right there, where it might look like it's the same image, but one is still in a potential state where it's not yet finalized, and then one is in a state where it's not only finalized, but it can face degrading.
Yeah.
About 10 minutes.
Yeah. I think what was it? I came to I think it was like a Vsauce video or whatever, where they were talking about how if you're mapping out like land or whatever, where do you decide to make the measurement? Because no matter what, you could go around the same thing over and over again with a smaller and smaller and smaller measuring device, like all the way down to the Planck level. No matter what, you will always find more
deviations.
Yeah, more deviations, more length. Like because everything, the smaller you go, there's still more stuff to measure. So
And the math might get useless. The math might not be useful at some point. Yeah, like a decimal type math.
Yeah,
that's where, like in computers, that's where we switch over to a floating point calculation, where you're no longer having to take whole numbers in the decimal whole number idea, which can start to get to be really, really big whole numbers. Now with floating point, you start to use fraction and exponent. So it'll be no. What's the fucking word I'm looking for?
Numeric?
Notational. Notational. So, like rather than having like a fucking 40 digit number in the decimal system, in a floating point system, it could be, you can use the exponent, which is like 9e minus 10, right? And it's like literally less to calculate, and then then when that does try to calculate things, it calculates it as a fraction rather than as a decimal, and it's a lot easier to do big numbers, a lot easier to crunch math. In the floating point. Oh, keep hitting my mic.
Is it also like, are we talking about like how the computer reads and writes information, or is it just, you're just talking about getting a computer to just crunch like actual equations for whatever? There's like your research.
It's how it reads and writes information, right?
Yeah.
So like in say music software. Back when I first started recording, you were lucky if you could get 24-bit sound. Yeah. Right. And then whenever you recorded it, you'd put it into the computer. Either you'd record it into the computer or you put it in. Either way, you'd be working in 16-bit, or you'd be working in, if you're lucky, 24-bit. but that's 24 bits per channel at the sample rate, right? So back then we would be using 44.1 more likely, but 48 if you could. So now you have 48,000 cycles of 24 bits to crunch on the computer, and computers having to crunch that tend to fuck up, right?
Yeah.
So back then you had to have a specific card for your Pro Tools or whatever like that, that was a specific, had the processing capability to play back up to 4 tracks at 24-bit, 48,000 cycles per second.
Wow.
And then you had to have a card per 4 tracks, right? Huh. Nowadays, we can work with a DAW and have 24 tracks playing whatever the fuck we want, right? And we don't have to have any special hardware, and it's because it works in a floating point system. So it'll work at 32-bit float, and what you're then working with is like a 23-bit audio track that's being calculated in a completely different way, rather than the computer having to calculate and play back these 24-bit audio files in true 24-bit per, every fucking moment. It has the ability to parse the math into these exponent chains, which are only 6 characters or something, and which can be calculated reasonably quickly. So now we can, without any hardware, we can balance out playback fucking 10 tracks at a 24-bit, no problem, but we're not actually playing them back in proper 224-bit, like all intra at the sample rate. We're playing them back at in a notational form. Mm-hmm. So it's a proxy representation of those true 24 bits at that hertz. It's actually calculating them in a much simpler fashion, and then just displaying them as in the same. As far as the display or the output, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's just how the computer does the actual calculating, and whether or not it has to do this longhand math, or it can do math in a truncated fractional form.
Yeah.
With just, 9e minus 10 times 5e minus 32. Much easier to calculate than bazillion character fucking numbers.
Yeah.
And so that's how that worked out. But
doesn't it also work like the computer doesn't give a shit which direction the code comes into, just as long as it has all of the right information within it? Like it's how they fixed the speed problem. Like there's only so fast a computer can be, right? Because of how much it has to read and write information coming in and out of it. So they figured out a way of, it doesn't really care which way the information comes in. If it's upside down, this backwards, forwards, it doesn't care. It'll read it whichever way it comes, and it'll get it right.
So that might be a chip thing as opposed to like the software side. Yeah. I don't know.
Oh man, it's pretty wild. Like some of this stuff, like the reason why we have fast computers isn't all because the components and technology has gotten better, but the way that the components interact with each other. Them. Yeah. But, like, don't get me wrong, like the chips that they came out with the past 4 years are so much better than what's been out before. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. Like
thankfully there's a big market for that, because it's coming to the point where the technology is getting so advanced that were it not for the large market in gaming and shit like that, then these gaming processors, GPUs, just basic processors and microchips would be the technology would be fucking expensive.
Have you seen those Threadripper fucking chips that AMD made?
Yeah.
They're like they're as big as like a person's palm, And they've got something ridiculous. I can't remember if it's 64 cores and like a bajillion threads, or if it's more. But that's
it's 64. I believe it's 64 threads.
Yeah, but it's like, it's got way more internals than I thought I'd ever see a chip have, like a consumer chip.
And that's like maxing it out at that point, right?
Oh yeah, it's there's
ridiculous. Only so many cores and threads that are even useful. In fact, for most people, multiple cores and threads just simply aren't even going to be utilized. You have to have software that takes advantage of cores and threads in order for them to be useful. So in like film and visual effects, some pieces of software like CGI, 3D generation of smoke and fire and fucking shit like that, you want cores and threads, man.
Oh yeah.
Like you want it. Like we had one of our video cards at Supernatural was like $7,500. Yeah. It was just crazy. But if you're doing Nuke or some other 2D compositing software, then cores and threads are just wasted on you, and you want processor and RAM, because the cores and the threads of the processor itself inconsequential because the software itself isn't going to use it. It's only using a core. So if you have one fucking big ass core, you're better off than having an 8-core processor with, 24 threads or whatever, 48 threads or whatever the fuck they can pull out of an 8-core processor now. Yeah. Because it's not ever going to be used. It can only use 2 threads at a time, and that's that. Yeah. So we have to wrap this up because we got 4 minutes, and for the fucking Zoom itself is going to go shit the bed. But right on. It's a heck of a convo. Time. I wish we had more. Well, it was 3 hours and 38 minutes so far. So hopefully we covered something. It's funny because whenever we finish, whether it's you or me or it was Garrett as well, I'm always like, fuck, we got like 10% of the conversation maybe. But then I'll listen to it and I'll be like, actually, no, I've covered some stuff. Yeah, but it almost feels like after the conversations are done, that's when like the true conversation happens inside, like with the reflection, and it's like, oh fuck, I wanted to say this, and this made me think of this. Well, I better save that sucker for if we do this again, because even if it's not a part of the specific topic that starts the thing, it'll still be like, hey, remember that thing we were talking about? Check this thing out. So when you think about it, forget it. Yeah, that's the rule. When you think about it and you're like, fuck, I want to bring this up, bury it. Yeah, bury it in your shit, because if you're like, I gotta try to remember this, it'll never come up again ever. That's right. But if you're like, fuck it, buried, instant recall when you need it. Oh yeah. You got to throw shit away for it to be available. You try to fucking, memories are like sand, man. The harder you grip them, fuck, the more they fall, the faster they go. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Hell yeah. Well, till next time, Danny Hush Jordeo. Appreciate it. Thank you. And we'll talk to you again. Yeah. Peace out, everybody. If you like the podcast, press follow or subscribe on YouTube. Hit the notification bell if you want to be tortured by the bullshit, and join us on Discord. Click on the link in the description, join us on Discord, join the conversation, and hit up Patreon if you'd like to support us. Cheers. Bye. Cheers, man.